Cool Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know I'm your humble host, the Yameen of Revolution, and Kamala is busted as a plagiarizer, a thief, and so much more. We heard she was married before. We're going to be getting into all of that. Before we start, be sure to wipe your feet. That means hit the like button, like, share, subscribe, let everybody know Cold Figures Live. Salute, family, peace and blessings. Welcome to the House of Revolution. Let's get right into this information tonight. The thief, the plagiarizer. Did she have a genuine thought?
Oopsie, it appears that Vice President Kamala Harris plagiarized parts of her 2009 criminal justice book. That's according to new reporting from City Journal's Christopher Rufo. Rufo reports that, quote, Kamala Harris plagiarized at least a dozen sections of her criminal justice book. It's titled Smart on Crime, according to a new investigation. The current vice president even lifted material from Wikipedia. Now, Rufo's team found that multiple violations were comparable in severity to the plagiarism found in former Harvard president Claudine Gay's doctoral thesis. CNN also reviewed several of the passages highlighted by Rufo, found that Harris and her co-author failed to properly attribute language to sources. As an example, Rufo points out that in one section of the book, Harris, without proper attribution, quote, reproduced extensive sections from a John Jay College of Criminal Justice press release. She and her co-author passed off the language as their own, copying multiple paragraphs virtually verbatim. As another example, in a section about a New York court program.
That's because she didn't write none of this. Whoever she hired to do this for her, they just ripped off and just copied some bullshit. She probably just not finding out. She probably mad and I'm like, damn, man, I thought you did the work for me. The other person like, nah, man, I was busy.
Harris, quote, stole long passages directly from Wikipedia, which is long considered an unreliable source by some. She not only assumes that online encyclopedia's accuracy, but copies its language nearly verbatim without citing the source. That's from Rufo. For context, Harris co-authored her book at the beginning of her political career, the run-up to her campaign to serve as California's Attorney General. The book was meant to help establish her credibility on criminal justice issues. We requested the Harris campaign's response, but we did not receive one as of yet.
Unsurprisingly, the story took off on conservative social media. Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, reacted to the story, tweeting, quote, hi, I'm J.D. Vance. I wrote my book, unlike Kamala Harris, who copied hers from Wikipedia.
Fox News contributor Joe Concha wrote, quote, gotta say this is the least surprising thing I've read in quite some time. Bit ironic that plagiarism is what doomed Biden's first run for president back in 1988. Then again, the media will completely ignore this because of who is breaking the story, and that's just a whole bowl of wrong. Donald Trump Jr. wrote, quote, yikes, more evidence that Kamala Harris is a fraud. And I saw that the New York Times actually has covered this controversy, but let's not give them credit too quickly. Here is their headline. Conservative activist seizes on passage from Harris book.
Yeah.
They're seizing on the fact. Look, they found it's real. It is very serious plagiarism in my view. I've looked it over. It is extensive. It is passage after passage. For instance, that John Jay College press release, it's just copy and pasted a long, substantial section. If you do that, you have to put it in quotes and say it's from John Jay College press release. You put it in quotes. This isn't even like an example where, like in some of the Claudine Gay stuff, where it was just, it was attributed to another source, but it was not paraphrased enough, and so you should have put it in quotes. This is not even attributed, and it's direct. It's not paraphrased at all. It's direct.
Facts are stubborn things. This is a 200-page book. There is one paragraph in which, by the way, they quoted from the John Jay release all the other citations. And one paragraph didn't have the quotes around it. But guess what? Right next to it, there was a citation. It just didn't have the quotes around it. This was like a clerical error. It was a mistake. Editors need to do a better job at this kind of thing. But this is such a nothing burger of a story. And it just shows how desperate the right wing is right now to win, that they're literally saying, oh, they forgot to use a quote when 5 other paragraphs from that same thing, which was cited, by the way, in the footnotes next to the paragraph, had quotes around it. This is such a nothing burger.
It's not a nothing burger at all. I'm sorry.
Really don't have any. It was not plagiarism. CNN did a whole fact check on this. Robbie, are you serious?
It's absolutely plagiarism. It meets the definition of plagiarism by
If the page has 4 paragraphs with quotes around it citing that it was from this John Jay press release, and 1 paragraph does not have quotes around it, but it also has a citation of the press release.
It's not 1 paragraph. It's 12 separate sections that do not have quotations or proper attribution. This is very serious. If this was a Republican candidate or pundit,
we wouldn't use it.
CNN.
We wouldn't use it. This is ridiculous.
Absolutely. CNN's K-File, great reporter. He does this all the time, finds examples of plagiarism from Republicans and Democrats. This has ruined Republican pundits' careers. He digs it up. He's reported it. It's well established that that's fair to do. This falls squarely in that category. Yep. If there's anything
what this proves is she never had a genuine thought. Even like right now, we're like, lady, give us something genuine. She can't do it. In the beginning of her political career, even her first book was plagiarized and ripped off from Wikipedia. Come on now.
Mitigating about it is that I don't actually believe she even wrote this book. She probably had some ghostwriter do it. So maybe it's on that person rather than her. I don't know if that makes it better necessarily, that I don't believe she actually wrote her own book. But it is definitely plagiarism. You just got to take the L.
No, they're grasping. They're really grasping.
That's not just my opinion, by the way. Ryan Grimm, progressive, former co-host of this show, he tweeted, good example of the New York Times just not being willing to take an L on Kamala's behalf. This is not a he said, she said. The book has a bunch of plagiarized sections. It just does. You can say that's not a reason not to vote for it, but it is plagiarism. It's not a nothing burger. It's clear academic, writerly misconduct.
John Jay was cited. This was an editorial issue. I mean, I would be very angry if I had found out that the editors didn't properly put things in quotes, but that is not Kamala Harris. She already cited where it came from. It's in the footnotes.
What about the section copy-pasted from Wikipedia?
The footnotes. Go look at the footnotes. This has just been fact-checked by CNN, as you stated.
You can't just put a footnote.
I understand that, and that's the editor's job. That is not Kamala Harris. And why are we even having this conversation 2 weeks before the election when you have a literal guy who wants to incite violence and is calling for the military
the election? Will I be allowed to point out Kamala Harris's plagiarism? Where's the date on the calendar where it will be allowed to discuss some flaws of the
not quoting something properly, and that's the editor's fault.
At no point did I say that Kamala Harris's plagiarism is akin to inciting violence or is some reason to support Donald Trump. It's just bad in its own right. And this is exactly what's wrong with the Democratic progressive worldview right now. Is just you must be required to overlook all the flaws in the candidate. I mean, I agree with you. It would have been better to visit some of these flaws of Kamala Harris in terms of an actual primary and debate process where voters on the Democratic side are deciding who is the least flawed candidate to be their person, who's the most compelling person. They did not do that. They just coronated Joe Biden and then were forced to concede that he is mentally incapable of being the president again, and dramatically and suddenly substituted him for Kamala Harris, who has not been vetted or tested or approved by any vote.
Oh man, I'm tired of hearing that lady. That's a DEI hire right there. That's the definition, that lady right there. They just hired her because she's white. She's a white middle-aged woman. She got the job. She didn't earn it. Oh my goodness. But let's hear a little bit more about this plagiarism story. Salute. Then we're gonna dig deeper into Miss Kamala.
The nominee is now facing new accusations of plagiarism over her 2009 book, Smart on Crime. All right, here with reaction, President and Executive Editor at the Daily Signal, Rob Bluey. Rob, thanks so much for being with us here. I'm going to start right with that plagiarism stuff because that is the new information coming in. Accusations against Kamala Harris for plagiarizing in her book. We know that President Biden was accused of plagiarizing back in 1987 in the primary debate, and even back in law school, which he has admitted. This doesn't go very far in making this party any more believable at this point, does it?
That's a great question, Katrina, and you're absolutely right. This is not the kind of accusation that they need at this 11th hour as the final sprint to the finish is here upon us. Any sort of distraction like this is a potential nightmare for the Harris campaign, particularly at a time where she's still trying to get her footing and distinguish herself from Joe Biden. You're right. Joe Biden was plagued by plagiarism throughout his career. He was forced to drop out of that 88 presidential campaign as a result of those accusations. And now for her to be facing those charges, something that we've seen tarnish the careers of people like Claudine Gay, the president of Harvard, not a good thing.
We want to bring in the National Review editor, Rich Lowry, into the conversation. Rich, good to see you here. We're learning that Kamala Harris's team is trying to figure out ways to distance herself after her disastrous interview on The View. She was asked, would you do anything different? Nothing that comes into mind.
I want to hear about The View. We just wanted to hear more about, okay, so she's actually humiliated about that. Okay, that's what I need to let the people know. She's a plagiarizer. But now we need to get into the real revolutionary tea. And who is this lady, Kamala? What's really been going on in her life? Like some scandalous behavior.
Kamala Harris lost the black vote because she put greens in the bathtub. And now, with just 21 days left until the election, she's basically forced to do so much press to try to earn it back. And that's why she's recently announced that she's going to go onto the Breakfast Club, Power 105. I will be watching that. I think it's supposed to be at 5 p.m. We're going to talk about that. But first, we are back with a potentially explosive revelation, an utterly bizarre skeleton that might be in Kamala's closet. Totally bizarre if it's true. I want to be very clear. There is nowhere that Kamala Harris can hide from me. There is no accent that she can throw on that is going to throw me off the scent. So let's just get started. Welcome back to Candace. I still just love my intro music. You know why? Because I just love running into Ye in Tokyo. I'm not even kidding. I just ran smack into him in Tokyo. He's doing great, by the way. He looks great. Tokyo is good for him. It's good for him to be out of Los Angeles. More about that maybe later on this week, because there's clearly so much that we need to get updated on, so much that I missed. And I promise that we're going to get to everything that we possibly can this week. I know Kamala was on the Call Her Daddy podcast. That was quite a pick for her. I know that she also went on the Colbert Show. We only have so much time in this first episode back, so we have to get to some breaking news immediately. I'm not going to bury this lead. Okay. So like I said, I was in Tokyo. I got some downtime. I decided that I was going to just flip through a couple of your emails. You guys are sending me so much information to info@CandaceOwens.com. And I was wondering if there was going to be anything big. And lo and behold, someone sends me a link to an article written. What are the chances of this? It was written by a Japanese guy. I'm in Japan, and now I'm getting sent an article that's written by some Japanese guy who claims that he knows all about Kamala, all about Kamala's family, particularly all about Kamala's mother, who he said was involved in the MK Ultra program. So first and foremost, stop the presses. Some of you guys are new to this podcast. Some of you guys are not new. And you know that when we began this independent endeavor, I basically said that reading the book Chaos was required reading. It was all about the MK Ultra program. It was all about the Charles Manson murders that actually the CIA was involved in. Like Charles Manson, we were supposed to believe he was this big, scary guy who was behind all of these murders in Hollywood, when in reality, the CIA had him as he was a Fed. They turned him while he was in prison. Obviously, were allowing him to give out all of this LSD to brainwash these women. I mean, just an incredible story that really makes you confront what your government is capable of. And so when I read this guy and he's saying that her mother was a part of the MK Ultra program, that she was essentially experimenting on monkeys, it kind of made things fit for me in a way, just like it passed the sniff test, because I know, and we're not going to get into it in this episode, that the civil rights movement was not a natural movement. It was a movement that was being done by people that had an interest in changing the dynamics in America. Black Americans were essentially just the tools. Obviously, we know that after the civil rights movement, some of the things that were installed were meant to actually destroy the Black community. When you get into LBJ, who was horrifically racist. I mean, so much happened in the 60s, shooting of JFK, that we still don't have answers for, but we kind of know who shot JFK and who was behind the shooting of JFK. Anyways, this guy is saying that her mother was a part of that. And that makes sense to me, because we know that Shamala Goplin, just don't know if I'm saying her name right, incredibly intelligent scientist, and yet spent so much time at these protests, just intertwining herself in the civil rights movement. Not the average thing that somebody who's like experimenting on baboons is like, okay, get a free weekend, I want to go down to a protest, unless you're being told to sort of infiltrate and make yourself a part of these protests. So I thought, okay, this is plausible, but also not really relevant, right? Because it's not going to shape the election. You can't exactly blame Kamala for the crimes of her mother. Also, if her mother worked for the government and they told her to experiment on monkeys, okay, what are you going to do? But it was something else that was buried within this article that caught my eye. Okay. Now, before I tell you what that was, the first thing that you're thinking is, Candace, how do you know that this Japanese guy wasn't just some crazy person? That's what my husband said. Fair point. Obviously, you get tons of emails. This could be a total schizophrenic guy who's just putting together a storyline and is writing all crazy. So I said, let me just do a little bit of research into this guy. And there's actually tons of things available about him. And there's actually a video of him speaking about something that has nothing to do with Kamala. So I want to give you guys the opportunity to practice your own discernment. I'm a big believer in believing your own eyes and believing your own ears, right? So I'm going to show you a video of the author of that article. I'm telling you, his name is Yoichi Shimatsu. And here is a video of him. We're just going to show you a clip of him discussing the Japanese Fukushima nuclear disaster. Take a listen.
Well, there's two phenomena that came out of the Fukushima nuclear releases in 2011, when huge amounts of radioactive isotopes were released from, especially from reactor 3, but the 3 reactors that melted down, and the reactor 4 spent fuel pool, which was on fire. The first problem was that the disaster occurred on 3/11 in March, but by April through May of that same year, 2011, a massive ozone hole started to open up over the North Pole. And the timing suggests that it was a catastrophic event caused by some phenomena, which could only have been the Fukushima disaster. What the basis of that is, the scientific basis for this ozone hole would be that every ionizing radioactive isotope, every single one of them, are massive destroyers of ozone.
So what do your eyes and ears tell you about that guy immediately? Not a crazy person, seems highly intelligent. The reason why we do that is because one of the exercises that journalists today take place in is constantly trying to discredit people, calling people crazy. Don't pay attention to this person. They're a racist. They're a sexist. They're crazy. You look at this guy, you go, okay, this is a Japanese man. He sounds very intelligent. He's none of those things. It wouldn't make sense for a Japanese guy just to be randomly racist towards an Indian woman. Okay. And I can now tell you a little bit about his background. Shimatsu is about as intelligent and as accomplished as he sounds. He is the former editor of the Japan Times. If you're not familiar with the Japan Times, it is the largest and the oldest English newspaper in Japan. And he received his master's in journalism from Berkeley University. Yes, the old stomping grounds of Kamala's mother and Kamala's father, who he claims to know. He claims to know the mother. He claims to have run the same circles as her. Now, as I was reading his piece, the hatred that he feels for Kamala Harris and her family is palpable. And he offers a reason for that hatred. He claims that it's because he mentored someone named Jeff Adaki, who was involved in San Francisco politics. And indeed, he was. Jeff Adaki was mysteriously murdered. This is according to him. You look it up. The story is incredible. He was a lawyer, he was a public defender, and he was also a San Francisco mayoral candidate who died in some unbelievably suspicious circumstances after having made enemies with the San Francisco political establishment. The establishment was after him, making statements against him. He was coming after their pensions. He had amassed a lot of power. People liked him. And one such person, by the way, who was opposed to him and ran a candidate against him was Willie Brown. Yeah, Willie Brown, the one that Kamala, the married man that Kamala had an affair with, that gave her political comeuppance. And so, yeah, you look into that Jeff Adaki story about how he died, how days before he died, he was saying that the medical examiner was corrupt. And then that medical examiner was the same one who conducted an autopsy on his dead body. And then that autopsy result was reversed. I mean, it is as shady as it gets, just a true California, San Francisco scandal. So this author was the mentor to this man, and he still believes that he was murdered. And I will let you guys decide. We're going to park that aside for a moment because Shamazi makes another stunning claim right at the top of his piece that caught my attention. I'm going to read it to you verbatim. This is what he wrote in the essay. He wrote, about a decade ago, I was scanning the society page with a photo of Kamala Harris's marriage to a wealthy Canadian British businessman. My personal dislike of her, since my sojourn in San Francisco, followed by the mysterious murder of Jeff Adaki, I was something of his mentor to the evil brew of San Francisco Democrat politics, made me want to vomit on seeing her overjoyed smile arm in arm with a British subject, conferring on her 2 added citizenships, Brit and Canadian, atop of her American passport and maybe even Indian residency papers. She's a worldly woman indeed, and in action. Like so much for personal record, her marriage to the Canuck has since been scrubbed from the record as if it never happened. That's very convenient for her, run for the presidency, which disallows foreign citizens to hold the highest position in American governance. Oh, yes. Did I ever mention that Kamala's a cheater? In more ways than one. Okay, so I'm looking at this guy. He seems to have a pretty good memory. He definitely has a record, which I would say makes him a legitimate person. Like I said, as an editor to the Japan Times, this is not some kooky, crazy person. Now we know that he did, in fact, run the same circles as her, the same circles as potentially her mother. And he is recalling with tremendous detail a photo of her having married some Canadian British guy that he says has since been scrubbed from the internet. My instinct just right away went, I think this man is telling the truth. He has, you can tell, like I said, contempt for her. He can tell as you read his piece that he believes that she is involved, and just like her mother was, in the higher echelons of the government, involved with the feds who are able to sort of disappear these sorts of things. My instinct just says, Candace, you should look into this. Because, by the way, just even the backstory, the idea that this woman never got married at all until she met Doug Emhoff, who swept her off her feet in 2014 when she was 49 or 50 years old, questionable. But of course, then you go, why would she hide her marriage? Like, no one really cares if you're previously married anymore. Nobody really holds, people who are not Christians, I would say, don't really hold the sacrament of marriage. It's not important. People get divorced all the time. Why hide this? Why hide a marriage? There would have to be something very big about her spouse that she wouldn't want us to know. Maybe who he is, maybe like he suggests, it's because he's not a citizen, or there's something about her citizenship that's a question mark. Like I said, I don't know, but I'm curious. It has my attention. So I decided to actually run her name and see if there was ever, or maybe there's more than one previous marriage. Who knows? I actually never even thought to take this angle, and I decided to look into it to see if I could find any hits on a marriage between Kamala and somebody else. And I did come across something very interesting. Now, I want you to take this with a grain of salt. There could, of course, be another Kamala Devi Harris who resided in California. But we did come across a Kamala Devi Harris who applied for a marriage certificate on April 29th of 1984. So our Kamala would have been 20 years old. I'm going to show you that document. You'll notice that it is blurred. It's intentionally blurred because you have to purchase it, which we have. So you guys don't have to go out and do that. Essentially, you have to purchase it and then they deliver it electronically within 24 hours. We did that this morning because it was closed yesterday. What it shows us is a marriage between a Kamala D. Harris and a Philip J. Henderson, which took place in Reno, Nevada. What we know from this document thus far is that the Kamala that is listed, Kamala D. Harris, was a resident of California, and that her husband's residence is listed as in Michigan. That is literally all we know, okay? Like I said, there could be a circumstance where there just is another Kamala D. Harris who was living in California and got married. And so what I'm going to do at this point, as we await more information, is to just offer it up to the public. What I want you to do, again, you don't need to purchase this document, but somebody out there knows something. Somebody saved a newspaper clipping. I know grandmas be cutting out newspaper clippings, putting it on. Nobody knows why they're constantly cutting out newspaper clippings and saving it and tacking it along. Somebody will recall exactly what it is that Yoichi is saying he recalls, that she was married to a Canadian. Maybe somebody still has that newspaper clipping. More details. Again, maybe there was a marriage that took place in Canada and you guys are able to go through the documents in Canada to see that if you can find something, you can just check wherever it is that you live. Like I said, this has caught my interest. I believe there is something there. Like I said, Kamala D. Harris is not the most popular name in the entire world. And I also found something very strange that when I was looking this up, somebody had intentionally tried to blend, to confuse matters, that Kamala D. Harris with a Kamala, which is spelled with an E, Kamela Harris, who was living and is still alive, lived her entire life in Washington. They intentionally tried to blend the records to confuse it. I thought that was very strange. Like I said, we know nothing yet. We are asking for the public. If you know anything, remember anything, recall anything, if you are Canadian and you recall something, if you're American and you know something or saw something or remember the same thing he remembers, message us, send us an email rather at info@CandiceOwens.com. In the meantime, we have reached out. We were able to get his email. We have reached out to Yoichi Shimatsu, and we are hopeful that we will hear more. We'll take a brief pause here to remind you guys about Good Ranchers. You know that we absolutely love them here on the show. You guys do not. This is one of those things where me, the messenger, is definitely going to get shot because none of us were awake back in 2008. So when people were pointing out some oddities about Barack Obama, right, everyone was quick to go, oh, that's because of racism. Like, that's like, come on, this is absolutely happening because you just don't like him because he's black. And I count myself among them. I have to always remind you guys, like, I was a liberal or left leaning. I never actually voted for Democrats, but I too thought that anybody that was saying anything about him was racially motivated. I cried the night that Barack Obama won. But I want to be clear. I've grown up since. I've got 3 kids now. I'm married. I'm seeing the world do it through a different way. I realize what the media is, and I realize how they really do think that Black people are stupid. And in the retrospect, there were definitely some very weird things about Barack Obama. For example, and this is just a fact, back in 1991, when Barack Obama was completely unknown to the public, he was working with a literary agency that was named Acton and Distal, okay? They were tasked with promoting his first book, which was a book that was meant to be entitled Journeys in Black and White, which actually never wound up being published. But in anticipation of his book being published, they were promoting Barack Obama and other authors that were on their roster. And they promoted them in a booklet, which they distributed to people in the publishing industry, like, hey, here are our authors that we want you to publish. And in the booklet, they included a biography of all of their clients. And this is the biography that they included of Barack Obama. Okay, take a look here. It says, this is real, 100% real. Barack Obama, the first African-American president of the Harvard Law Review, was born in Kenya and raised in Indonesia and Hawaii. The son of an American anthropologist and a Kenyan finance minister, he attended Columbia University and worked as a financial journalist and editor for Business International Corporation. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so the whole concept of, like I said, that's 100% legit. The whole concept of whether or not he was born in Kenya was not coming out of racist ideas, right? It wasn't because people were just trying to delegitimize him. It was because he had a literary agent, and that literary agent published a pamphlet, and that pamphlet said that he was born in Kenya. And then suddenly that changed, and they were like, no, never mind. He was born in the USA. That person who published this never gave an answer for why they wrote that. They tried to say like, oh, like that maybe the literary agency just wrote that. Why would anybody just write that you're born in Kenya? It's like a weird thing to write. Okay. It doesn't matter in the scheme of things. He was already president for 8 years, but it's good to go back on that. And then of course there was this other odd thing that happened. Like he did, by the way, grow up in Indonesia. That's a fact, right? He, like, at the first 8 years of his life were spent in Indonesia. His mother moved him to Indonesia, and he went by a totally different name. He went by the name Barry Soetoro. Here's an old clip of journalist Matt Meager from Inside Edition revealing that truth. Just so you know, these were not conspiracies. Okay, take a listen.
As Senator Barack Obama has made his run for president, some have questioned his background, particularly the 4 years he spent as a child in Indonesia. He was educated in two schools, first a Catholic school and then later a public school. Matt Mahar traveled to Indonesia to take you to both of the schools the candidate attended.
This is the Assisi Catholic Grammar School in Jakarta, Indonesia. And Barack Obama is on his way to becoming its most famous former student.
Barack Obama.
The only record of Obama having attended the school is this old register. And look, it lists his name as Barry Sotoro. That's the name Obama took from his Indonesian stepfather, Lolo Sotoro.
A warlord.
Okay. So whatever you make of this, what we know is that Barack Obama was first and foremost, right after she gave birth, his white...
Judge Joe Brown told you his stepfather is a warlord and a billionaire, and Barry got billions in a trust fund from his stepfather.
His mother is the person that raised him, okay? Her name is Stanley Dunham. There she is, right there. That is Stanley Dunham. Okay, he never lied about this. He did not grow up in a household with his Kenyan father at all, Barack Obama Sr., whatever. He was raised by his mother, Stanley Dunham, and then she married a person who worked for the Indonesian government as a geographer. She married Lolo Sotoro, and Barry Sotoro was born. You know, he then moved to Indonesia. He went to school in Indonesia, and then he gets sent back to Hawaii at the age of 10. So for the first 10 years of his life, I'm just going, okay, like he was not exposed to Black people at all. He was exposed to Indonesians. And then he gets sent to Hawaii to get raised by his exceedingly white grandparents. Here's a picture of his grandparents. That's Madeline Dunham and Stanley Dunham, the person whose mother has the name of her father. So then, yeah, he is in Hawaii as well. And in case you didn't know this, he was extraordinarily wealthy. You probably could figure that out by all of us moving around. That's why while he was in Hawaii, he was enrolled in a private school. He attended the Punahou School, where tuition is for grades K through 12. Tuition is $31,000 per year. That's today, so you can account for inflation, okay? But that's where his grandparents enrolled him, okay? So it's important to note also that in 1970, when Barry Obama got to Hawaii, there were only 5,925 Black people in all of Hawaii. Okay. And it's worth noting that 80% of those, north of 80% of those 5,000 Black people were in the military. He was not exposed to Black people at all, is what I'm trying to make the point. Okay. He had literally not a single part of his upbringing was he around Black people. There were no students, no Black students at his very expensive private school. Okay, there's no Black people in Indonesia. And really, for those of you that haven't been to Hawaii, it's still like, it has nothing to do with America. It feels like we just took Hawaii and we're like, yeah, you're America. But when you go out there, you're like, okay, this is like its own thing entirely. They look more Asian than anything else. And they're kind of a little pissed off that we took them, if we're being completely honest about Hawaii now. So he went there. His mother went to a school that the same one that his dad went to in Hawaii, the same one that his stepdad went into Hawaii. Really kind of feels like he was a part of some weird military program. And then after that, after going to his $31,000 per year private school in Hawaii, he goes to Occidental College in Occidental University or college, whatever it is, in California for 2 years, where he roomed with a white guy for the first year, white guy with blonde hair. He's written about it for his freshman year, and then moved to live off campus in his sophomore year with a Pakistani for 1 year. His dorm mates have described him as doing a mean Mick Jagger impression. Literally, I know I've heard the name Mick Jagger, but I had no idea that he was the lead singer of the Rolling Stones until today. I was today years old when I learned that. I'm just saying, I understand, like, people grew up in a household, they listen to rock and roll. I didn't grow up in that household. MJ was not Mick Jagger for us. It was Michael Jackson. The whole reason we're doing this series is because somebody came for the Jacksons. That's the kind of household I grew up in. So then Barry Obama met and dated a woman in his sophomore year. Her name was Alexandra McNear. You might remember she's the one that released the letters that Barry wrote to her, where he talked about his homosexual feelings. Like he says, like he makes loves to men in his mind. And so he had like homosexual inklings. He then went to Columbia University and still dated Alexandra McNear and was writing her these letters at that time. Anyways, I'm just thinking, like, what part of Barack Obama's life gave him the authority to tell Black men how to act Black in America? That's what I'm asking you. What part of his life? Was it Hawaii? Was it Indonesia? Was it Alexandra McNear? At what point did suddenly like Barry Soetoro become the person who gets to tell Black men how to act in America? Because that's exactly what he's doing now. That's exactly what he has been doing. Is just because like once you do a photo op with Jay-Z or Diddy, suddenly like you're just like handed an award and gone, okay, now you're Black. Now everybody in the Black community has to listen to you. Because that's what it seems like. His history and his background is equally as shady as Kamala Harris is, if we are being frank. And they're bringing him out to essentially whip Black Americans into shape because, oh, they gave him the Black card. So now Black people better just listen to Barack Obama. So here he is suddenly lamenting the fact that Black men just aren't energetic enough for Kamala Harris. Take a listen.
Is that we have not yet seen the same kinds of energy and turnout in all quarters of our neighborhoods and communities as we saw when I was running. Now, I also want to say that that seems to be more pronounced with the brothers.
The brothers.
So if you don't mind, just for a second, I'm going to speak to y'all and say that when you have a choice that is this clear, when on the one hand you have somebody who grew up like you, knows you,
That's a lot.
went to college with you, understands the struggles and pain and joy that comes from those experiences. You have to work harder and do more and overcome and achieves the second highest office in the land.
I'm sorry, Barry Soetoro, but you are going to have to sit your ass down. I got to tell him right now. That's what Barry has to sit his ass down. This is like, she understands the struggle no more than you understand the struggle. Both of you, okay? How does this work? Again, Barack Obama was raised by three extraordinarily wealthy white adults. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that he is not genetically Black. He has been honest with the fact that he didn't know his dad, okay? His dad died, I think, when he was in college at some point. He never was raised by him, was never raised around Black people ever. That's fine. But why are you speaking to the brothers? Like, when did it become the brothers? What is this? How do three white people raise a strong Black brother? I want to know. Is it like grandma and granddad Dunham raised him to be a strong Black man, just like Kamala's Indian mother raised her to be a strong Indian woman or something? Like, what's actually happening right now? This is so insulting. And I am the most insulted by this, by the way, because I have dealt with years, the Black community telling me that I'm not Black because I voted for Trump. Like, you're not Black because you're a Republican. Why? Because I see through this stupid BS, this dumb game of thinking you can whip Black Americans with some hip hop music, with a Megan Thee Stallion twerking on stage, with Jay-Z and Beyonce marching at a BLM protest, and suddenly King, Queen, LeBron James sending out a tweet. Like, that's literally supposed to motivate me to vote, because I can see through the BS. I look up these people's background. I'm going, what about you is culturally Black? Barack Obama is not culturally Black. I'm sorry. It's time for us to accept that. Like I said, I was moved by him too in 2008. I thought, oh, okay. Like, I really didn't understand his background, and I questioned people who questioned him. But we have to just come to terms with the fact that we have been being played by Democrats for a very long time. And the reality is he is just as shady in terms of his background as Kamala Harris. I am a firm believer that they are breeding politicians. His background is almost too similar to Kamala Harris's in terms of literally no relation to the Black community, having so much wealth, and then as if they went through a school of what it is exactly that they should say to relate to the brothers. To relate to the brothers, to relate to the sisters. Oh, a little bit of Cardi B. I can't, okay? I'm sorry. I'm done with this. And I am actually very happy that Black men seem to be taking a larger leap away from this. I hope that Black women will follow suit and recognize this, to see how ridiculous it is that a woman who is saying she's washing greens in a bathtub and a guy who's suddenly calling Black people brothers, despite having literally no introduction to what it means to be culturally a Black person in America. I hope that we all can become awakened, but I'm very grateful that Black men seem to be holding the line. Like, I am with that 100%. All right, guys, brief break here to remind
over mess. I took time and went over the so-called plan, the Kamala Harris Black Agenda for Men. And folks, the majority of it was a spilled over mess. It was a cooked over mess meant to distract you and to lull you into some type of belief that, yeah, she's responding to you. Anyone making it seem like Kamala Harris came to the table fair-minded, in response, in good faith, those people are carrying water for the Democratic Party. Yes, you too. You too, you're carrying water for the Democratic Party. Because if you read over this, if you read over this agenda, maybe if you say, Tim, I didn't read the agenda, Tim. I didn't take a look at the agenda. I just saw that she did it. Well, you're going to have to use that talking point, because that's the only way that you're going to avoid this smoke. Because this thing that she did, this, folks, is no agenda. This is sugarcoating. This is a mirage of distraction. There's only one element of this whole thing. And believe me, it's 4,700 words. I took it, I put it into a Word doc. I want to do a word count. 4,700 words. If you take out the parts that are about Project 2025, we're down to 4,000. So it's from 4,700 to 4,000 words once you take out all the Project 2025 and Trump is evil stuff that should not even be in this document. This document should be about what you're going to do for Black people, Black men particularly, because you're billing it as your proof that you're going to work for Black men. So now we're down to 4,000 words. And of those 4,000 words, I found only one policy that had any promise that seemed like you were trying to do anything for Black people, specifically Black men. And even that policy is open to anyone. Listen, guys, she said she will ensure Black men can build wealth and achieve economic success by providing 1 million loans that are fully forgivable up to $20,000 to Black entrepreneurs. And then she drops a bomb. And she says, and others. And others. And others. I want Black people to know that and others is everybody else. And others includes, as Dr. Claude Anderson would say, Eskimos, Native Americans, Latino Americans, everyone else, including white Americans too. It's everybody. She says we're going to give 1 million loans that are fully forgivable to up to $20,000 for Black entrepreneurs and others who have historically faced barriers to starting a new business or growing an existing business. So if you're a white American who's a disabled vet or a veteran, I think you'd qualify. If you are a woman of any color, you would qualify. If you're a Black woman, you double qualify. Here we are, we're right back to it. How is this? How is this something that's supposed to incentivize Black men? See, the whole purpose why Black men need specific incentives is because whenever there's something that's for everybody, we get the least. It doesn't matter what it is. We're at the top of everything bad and at the bottom of everything good, and anything that ever comes out of any administration. Know that, first of all. So this plan is $20,000. The only reason why I say it's the best of all the other offers is because at least it's $20,000. But remember, up to 20 grand. So it could be $500. And once again, you got to compete against everybody else who's trying to get it. Whether they were here, their families have been here 500 years, or if their families got here the day this thing goes into effect. So basically what I'm trying to tell you is, Kamala Harris thinks you're dumb. She thinks you're a moron. She thinks black men are... She thinks we're idiots. And the people that she's fooled, that are in the media business, the Bakari sellers who retweeted this, who I responded to, basically saying what I'm saying now, which is this applies to anybody in America. Anybody who's disenfranchised historically to any extent could apply for this and have grounds to get accepted. And you know it, Bakari. But see, Bakari is not stupid. He knows. He's just a shield. He's protecting his money. See, they already got their reparations. It's called a good job from the Democratic Party. It's called getting consulting fees from the Kamala Harris campaign and the DNC and the Act Blue and all the other organizations that check in or chip in money. So they don't need anything to work for them. And they won't call it out what it is. And Rowland won't call it out. And Bakari Sellers won't call it out. And all the other Democrats won't call it out. And you know what? Anybody that you watch, and I can say this firmly, and I stand on it. Anybody that you watch, any commentator, any political analyst that you watch that has not said something similar to what I'm saying, do yourself a favor and do not trust them. Because when the language, if they can't read the language of black men and others, if they can't put those two things together in their heads, they're either too stupid to be doing what they're doing or they're in on it. And I'm going with in on it because I don't want to insult people that I think they're smart enough to know how to read. I think they know what others mean. If it says black men and others, and others are other people, right? That's not black men and other black men. No, they would be the same black men. So basically, you're telling us something that this is for black men when you know already it's not for black men and it's not intended to be. I got into a fight with a very known popular person in independent media a few years ago, which really put me on the trajectory that puts me here today. Headed towards 200,000 on my own steam, you know? And part of the reason why we got into an argument is because she said that Bernie Sanders did not need a black agenda. All he needed to do was staple the name black at the top of all his policies. I said that. And I said the person that would say that black people don't deserve an agenda and that you should just be able to write our name at the top of it, of any policy that was for everyone. Because since we're so poor, it'll help us more because we're poor. I said anybody who would do that is not a real black person. And the entire independent media sphere came after me for it. They did their best to destroy me. This is the same thing. This is the exact same thing that she was proposing. Kamala Harris has done the exact same thing that was proposed by those sellout independent media folks who said, hey, we don't need anything special for black people. Just write black on whatever we got. They'll think it's for them. Because it kind of is. But you know what? If you got a lady at home, or if you got a man at home, whoever you got at home, it loves you. But if they ain't for you, if they're with everybody else and you, are they really yours? Are they really for you, or are they for everybody? They for the streets. And I'm trying to tell you, this plan right here, this ain't for black men, this is for the streets. And the streets got Latinos, Native Americans, white people that don't have money, and disabled folks, and LGBTQ people, and everybody else. And of course, all the women that you can find, no matter what demographic, ethnicity, doesn't matter. Basically, everybody except straight white men. And who knows, they probably won't work anyway. So the rest of this thing, man, besides the $20,000, which in essence, like in theory, is great because suddenly someone realized that giving people $50,000 tax, right, about tax deduction, is not going to help you start a business. Yeah, because tax deductions don't help you start up. They help you stay afloat, or they help you maybe expand, possibly, but they can't help you start up. You don't get them till you file taxes after you spent the money. Get it? That's what an incentive, a tax-based incentive does. So, yeah, surprisingly, she admits that and says, hey, well, you know what? Since that's the reason, and most people can't start businesses is they don't have cash, here we go. We're going to give 1 million loans so people can have money to start businesses. So in theory, it works. But if you got, I don't know, 5 million people applying for the 1 million loans, and there are people going to be prioritized or whatever, you get it. You get it? All right. She got sitting here about cryptocurrency. She'll make sure owners of investors and digital assets benefit from a regulatory framework. I don't even know what that means, but it doesn't sound like it has much teeth, does it? She talks about expanding access to bank accounts, lending to help black men build wealth. And then she says she's going to work with the private sector. Work with the private sector? How do you work with the private sector exactly? What does that even look like? How can a president enforce anything for the private sector to do? So bogus is what I'm calling. I'm calling bogus. She says she's going to break down unnecessary barriers to employment for black men. How would you do that? How would you break down barriers for employment for black men? And it says here, she will work with Congress to require businesses to limit the use of criminal arrest records. Oh, she's going to work with Congress. Yeah, it's a bunch of working with it is, which is code for ask them, maybe. I mean, if you ain't doing an executive order, if you ain't leaning on people to get it done, if you're not threatening people's jobs, if you're not telling people you're going to vote, you're going to surrogate against them, or you're going to put your people on their asses like Lyndon B. Johnson would do, then what are you even talking about? Working with Congress? Enabling black men and others to profit when company executives profit. She's talking about closing the racial wealth gap. Once again, got to work through Congress, expanding pathways for black men to good paying jobs, providing more pathways for black men to become teachers. I like the idea. How are you doing that? What are you going to do for them? How are you going to help them become teachers? I don't see anything specific that she's going to do to get these things done. It's all wish list. I'm going to talk to people. I'm going to ask Congress. I'm going to ask private sector. Ask. There's no demands. There's no executive orders. There's nothing here. There's no, I'm going to allocate money in the budget to do this particular thing. Nothing. It's all a bunch of, I'm going to wish nice things. She basically should say, I'm going to cross my fingers and hope things work out for you after I get in office. I can't find a single thing, guys, that gives me hope. The only thing that I saw that was tangible was the low cost for internet access. And I thought, that's good. But damn it, Johnson, that's not enough. That's a 55-degree day. Ain't nobody barbecuing on a 55-degree day. Yeah, lowering the cost of internet access to $30 for people that are low income, that's a 55-degree day, man. We still got to wear jackets. We ain't breaking out the grill. So this Kamala Harris agenda for black men, this plan to right the ship to help black men pull ahead or be to be more successful, to bridge the gap, to build wealth. It's not even fool's gold. To call it fool's gold would be an overstatement. Nah, man, this ain't fool's gold. This is just a plain old jack move. This is just a lame, this is a slap in the face is what it is. It's an embarrassing attempt to get your vote, just to apply more pressure, to have your girlfriend who won't take time to read it, or to have somebody in your life who won't read over the damn document, just hear a news about it and go, she did all she could do, what's your problem? And at the end, all she's trying to do is cause more rift and more infighting amongst the black community over nothing. Yeah, all she did was come up with a way to get others to pressure black men more without actually tangibly offering anything. And let's keep it real. Let's keep it a buck. Does anybody trust her to do anything anyway? Charlamagne the God and all the other people that support Kamala Harris, D.L. Hughley, those people are doing well. They know her. It's helped raise their profile. No wonder they're supportive. Roland finally got his interview. He's probably jumping up and down, peeing all over himself with joy. Congratulations, Roland. Now you're rolling in money. But at the end of the day, it's black men. Us real black men. Us black men that are wise enough to know when something ain't right. When we know the mayonnaise is off. We know something's done turned. This beef done turned. We can't cook this. We can't serve this to our families. We know something's wrong about this. It don't look sturdy because it's not. If Kamala Harris was serious about helping black men, if she wanted to show up the black vote, would she really needed her arm twisted? Did she really need her arm twisting by Senator Nina Turner or countless other people that have said similar things? Does she really need Obama to shit the bed for her to come out with this plan? I mean, how much pain did the LGBTQ community have to extend on Obama for Obama to come out with a plan to make gay marriage legal? Did it require the house burning down? Did it require a president to come out and put his foot in his mouth? I mean, what did it take? See, if Kamala was serious about this at all, enough for me to put any stock in it, any faith in it at all, she'd have had to come out with this on her own volition months ago. I mean, hell, she could have been doing these types of events or this type of plan 3 years ago, man. She's been vice president. And it's not like Biden could just get rid of her. You guys stop defending that. If Biden would have got rid of Kamala, he'd have been slitting his own Achilles. Never in a million years could he have done that. So stop talking as if she was so handicapped like you are at your job with your boss. Nah, she's got a microphone. If anything, she was a threat. At any time, she could have went buck wild and did a tell-all and totally sank Biden's entire administration if she wanted to. She's got an entire staff, man. She's got a corporation behind her. She got her team and he has his team. But if she was serious about this, if this was her goal, if it was her mission to help Black America, she would have been helping Black America. And she hasn't been. So at this time, at this stage of the game, when her back's against the wall, when the numbers are down, and now all of a sudden she pulls up like she means something, and she's gonna jump out and save the day, like she's gonna show you who she really is. Dog, she can't even answer a question on the Shade Room. So look, call me what you want to call me. Say I'm biased. I had the cards stacked against her. You'd be wrong. I'm black and I live in America. Anything that benefits me, I would say, yeah, that sounds like good. Let's see if she owns up to it. But I can't in good conscience co-sign, support, or even give a kind word to a half-baked plan at the fourth quarter, the bottom of the ninth inning, when your back's against the wall, when you're losing, and then your guy comes out and makes a bad call that puts you further in the crosshairs when it's just announced that you're down probably 5 points to Trump in swing states, and you're going on Fox out of desperation, and you're flailing around blaming Trump for everything from crime in Springfield, Ohio, to the deficit when you're the sitting vice president. And now you want to say you're riding for Black America? Here you are, black man, come home. And another thing, how dare you say black men can't vote for a white president when you're a so-called black woman not only married to a white man, but just made a white man your VP. Yeah, I said it. So that's it, guys. My name is Tim Black, Tim at TimBlackTV.com. Send your hate mail to your mom.
Name of Scott Jennings. Now, he's out of Kentucky. He is actually a Republican. And it's interesting they have a Republican on CNN constantly as a contributor. But Scott Jennings says something on CNN that we have been literally preaching about the Democrat Party for a long time. We have been saying that straight-laced alpha men in America, no matter what community they're from, but especially we're talking about the Black American man. If you aren't sassy and buck-broken, then the Democrat Party is not for you. Now, I want you to hear exactly what Scott Jennings says about this same subject matter, and then he's going to touch on one other point with it. Let's go ahead and check that out.
It was a rough week. I mean, her faves are down. They're struggling with, the front page of the New York Times this morning, Democrats struggling with African-American voters, particularly African-American men. This gender gap issue is real. It's a real problem, and you see the Democrats reacting to it. And I think what they are now finally in October, the election, coming to realize is that a lot of men think Democrats care more about dudes who want to become women than dudes who just want to be dudes. Well, no hunting, cosplay, or cringy videos is going to change it. The bet is made. Working class men, whether you're Black, Hispanic, or white, persistently, consistently do not believe the Democratic Party, and specifically Kamala Harris, are going to do a thing for them. They've been told that they're the problem, and I suspect they're going to rise up on election day and tell the elites who told them that you're wrong.
Well, saw when Scott Jennings basically said that the same thing I just said prior to getting started, that they're prioritizing, those who are sassy and buck-broken. And, no, yes, they are. Yes, that's who they prioritize. They rather see a black man in a dress, a black man saying he wants to go through operations, than a black man that has a family, that has his wife and his children that he's trying to take care of. Especially us as black men. They want to feminize the black man. We've been talking about that for a long time. On top of just that is men of other races who see the exact same thing. Men in general, American men. You better believe there's more straight-laced alpha men in America than what the Democrats are trying to promote. And the Democrats have went overboard with the things they're promoting. And the things they're promoting is not even bringing no food to the table. What they're promoting is not helping none of us pay our light bill, our water bill, our rent, our mortgage, insurance. That's not helping us do anything. And yet this is what they're on the campaign trail, the different things they're promoting. If they're not promoting that, they're promoting abortion. that's not going to do nothing for the bottom line of any American. Period. It's not. Because you can choose, because they say, oh, well, it's a woman's right to choose. You know, you can also choose to use all the different forms of, birth control too. That's a choice. But people want to go raw and then say, oh, I want this option because I was not responsible. That's all it is to it. But also he touched on basically toxic masculinity. Who's been teaching toxic masculinity? It surely hasn't been the Republicans. It surely hasn't been the Green Party. It surely hasn't been the Democrat, the Independents and Libertarian, but the Democrat Party has been teaching toxic masculinity. You all toxic. You understand what I'm saying? So when you attack men, and definitely black men in particular, you attack black men. Why do you think black men, or just any man in general, is going to come out and just vote for you like that? When they know when you get in charge, you're looking to undermine masculinity. You're going to reward men who say they want to be women, right? Or say they're girls, or whatever the case may be. This is what you're rewarding. You're not rewarding the man that's trying to go to trade school. You're not going to help him do that. You understand what I'm saying? You're not trying to, give a pat on the back for a man running into a burning building and saving somebody. Men do a lot of thankless jobs in society, and they get no credit for any of it. And then on top of that, you got these politicians running around here demonizing men. And one thing that I'm proud of my brothers for doing is to say enough is enough of the disrespect. Because see, that's one of the main reasons why black American men have said, no, we gathering our stuff, we leaving this Democrat Party, is because we have finally started to respect ourselves. See, people will disrespect you all day because you don't respect yourself. But when you respect yourself, then people got to respect you. It's just bottom line. And when black American men said, we're not dealing with the disrespect no more, we're not going to have Tiffany Cross talking down to us no more, we're not going to have Angela Rye, we're not going to put up with Obama, it don't matter who it is, they're not talking down to us, we'll show them better, we can tell them. Either we'll be warming up that couch on election day, or we'll be voting for Trump, or ourselves, or Cornel West, or whoever we want to vote for. But we're going to show these Democrats more than we can tell them. That's it. And one thing about men, we don't go rah-rah and, this is what I'm going to do. And no. Most men just going to do what they got to do. They're not going to tell you. You'll see election night or that next morning what men had to do. Because a lot of black men, it's not, let me tell y'all something, Democrats. I don't know who's advising y'all, but that playbook of disrespecting black men, that day is over. You going to respect us, period. Your shaming tactics, we look at that as disrespect. Talking crazy, disrespect. Anything but respect and honor and how you treat men of other groups, that's the only way you're going to engage us as black American men, period. Or you're going to lose election after election after election. Because one thing, Democrats, I want you to listen to something. The only reason black women were so faithful to y'all is because black men was there too. You understand? And black men was voting for Democrats too. Well, the reason why now you're having problems is because black men have got up and left, and black women look and say, wait a minute, hold on, they leaving? What's going on around here? Let me go with them because I don't want to be over here with something going on. See, not all the sisters in the community is not silly now. You got some sisters that's very smart in this community. And if they see the black man get up and move and do something, they're going to go right with him because they say, hey, at least over here, these men know that we with them and they're going to protect us. They're going to look out for us. Those women over there are going to be by themselves and not going to have no men advocating for them. And then when they get in trouble, then they going to want to come around like, oh, well, we should have left when y'all left. Try to tell you. But any political party who disrespect black men or black women, we cannot allow that disrespect. We can't allow black women to be disrespected. We can't allow black men to be disrespected, period. If you want our vote. Now, you can disrespect us all day, but just understand you're not going to get our vote. And then when you want our vote, you gonna come bring something to the table. Because see, we're not saying let's go over here and just be Republicans. No. We can vote Republican in one election if we want to, and we can vote Green Party. No. We're gonna be politically independent. See, now we're in the middle. Because going to the Republicans, you're back to square one. Oh, we got the vote. No. Nobody should have the black vote. Everybody should compete for the black vote. Competition is beautiful, right? No one should have a monopoly on the black vote. And that's what a lot of black Americans are doing. They come into the middle. Now, some may go to the Republicans, but I prefer you come into the middle and you just say, hey, if you want our vote, then you got to give us something. Period. Sure, we can like some policies that may come from different political parties at times. And when we vote on individual candidates. We don't vote parties. We vote policy. The policy of that individual candidate is what we look at. Now, if you got a Democrat that's local and their policies are good locally, okay, you can vote for a Democrat, but you're voting for an individual and their policies, not that party. Then it may be a Republican, right? And you say, okay, I like his policies, her policies. Now, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and vote for a Republican. But anybody that's trying to walk around here shaming you, oh, I can't believe it. You're not going to vote Democrat? What, you going to vote Trump? And if you're going to do that, I'm not going to talk to you. Thank you. Thank God you're leaving. Because one thing that I love and one thing that I've always said, God, remove people out of my life that don't mean me no good. Because if you are mad and don't want to talk to me behind who I may choose to vote for, then that means you don't need to be around me. And I thank God for this election, because that has cleared out a lot of people that don't need to be around me going into 2025. That's beautiful. I can't believe you saying the things you're saying. I'm not going to watch you no more. I'm unsubscribing to everything. Good. I'm glad you're doing that. That way it clears you out the way so new people could come in. Because sometimes you need a new audience sometime. Go over there and go continue on with that cycle over there, and that's fine. I'm not mad at you or anything like that. But we got 7 billion people in the world. And somebody gonna listen and want some truth. Don't even if a family member don't want to talk to you no more behind the election, thank God. Because you out of my life and you chose to walk away. I didn't put you out over an election. You mad behind a politician that you don't know personally? No, you need to go at that point. There's something wrong with you, not me. Something wrong with you. You throw away relationships with people for a politician you never met, a politician you don't know what they got going on or anything. So no, this election has been beautiful for Black America. Beautiful. We've been saying we needed a separation in the Black community. We've been preaching that. We need a separation in the Black community. And thank God this election, thank God for Vice President Kamala Harris. Thank God for her, because she has been one of the people that have brought the division that we've been needing to have in this community. Get them away from people like us. Get them away and let them go with y'all over there. You better understand that. But a lot of men, they're not feeling this. They're not feeling it. Men on the jobs, they talk about these sort of things all the time. And a lot of men gonna show them.
Every other presidential candidate in modern era has done it.
So the Kamala Harris implosion continues after her latest desperate plea to get Trump to release his medical records. Not only that, she's now accusing Trump of showing dementia signs during his latest town hall. And the funny thing about that story, she ended up getting fact-checked by ABC. Yes, I know. Crazy, right? So before I go any further, let me play you the clip from the town hall, and then we'll get into and how the media is trying to push this ridiculous story. Watch.
Doctor, thank you very much. The chief, he was great. And if they could play Ave Maria, if you can get it, Justin, let's go if you can. It's a little quick notice. Ave Maria.
I remember that. I was at that rally.
For Bernie Moreno, who's now doing very well, I understand,
He
the
is.
senator, so I think he's doing very well. But we'll listen to a couple of songs if you want, and that's okay with me. I like it. So we'll do that. We'll do those songs that we had mentioned, Justin. And if Justin doesn't get it right, he gets fired. Okay.
Sir,
Right?
I have a quote that I like a lot by John Wayne. It says, "Life is hard, but it's harder when you're stupid."
Yeah.
I think that perfectly explains Kamala Harris,
Yeah.
right?
Ooh.
Right, sir? You had said you wanted to close with a specific song. or
Okay,
we could
let's
take
do a couple of
two more
mine.
fast questions.
So, Justin, how about a couple of really beauties, and we'll sit down, relax. Let me just give you the bottom line, though.
Okay, so you see nothing wrong in that clip. Clearly, it was impromptu. No one saw the two medical emergencies coming, of course. And I thought it was the right thing to do. He probably listened to his intuition in the moment. Hey, you know what? Two people are now having problems. Let's go ahead and lighten the mood a little bit and play some nice, relaxing, or fun music. So good on our former president for doing something like that. Shows that he's a human being and he has empathy and he knows how to keep people entertained. Okay, now let's move to where the campaign came out, Kamala Harris, that is, and started to accuse him of being frozen and confused, et cetera, et cetera. So here is the actual social media post from Kamala HQ. As you guys can see here, it says Trump appears lost, confused, and frozen on stage as multiple songs play for 30 plus minutes, and the crowd pours out of the venue early. Now, there's no actual video footage of showing the crowd leaving early. That's number one. Number two, this video clip here that got 17 million views on X was highly edited. So there was a lot of jump cuts. They didn't show you the clip that I showed you. And that's what the Kamala Harris campaign has been very guilty. They even got fact checked by CNN most recently a couple weeks back, where they've been accused of manipulating videos to try to tell people that there's something wrong with Trump when clearly there isn't. And so when you talk about cause and effect, there was another account made called Kamala HQ Lies, as you guys see here on the screen. And it says, what do you do when your campaign is failing? You lie about two medical emergencies. You edit the videos. This is the only Kamala Harris strategy left. And then they actually show the full clip. And again, this is why I told you guys at the beginning of the video, this is the latest desperate plea from her to really go into this mode of lying about everything when it comes to Trump. Now they're lying about his mental acuity and demanding his medical records. Yes, I know. And that's why we see Kamala Harris again going crazy at her rally, trying to bait Trump into releasing his medical records. Watch this clip.
He's not being transparent with the voters. He's not being transparent. So check this out. He refuses to release his medical records. I've done it. Every other presidential candidate in modern era has done it.
Yeah, so imagine the audacity to make that comment or accuse Trump of not being transparent about his medical records when you, Madam Vice President, have been covering up the current sitting president, Sleepy Joe Biden, when it comes to his mental acuity. And you were so deranged after the embarrassing performance from him on that debate stage against Trump. You went on live national TV and continued to lie to the American people. Let's go back down memory lane. Watch this clip.
Debate at this moment, obviously, I mean, you can't honestly say, I mean, can you say that you are not concerned at all having watched the president's performance tonight?
It was a slow start. That's obvious to everyone. I'm not going to debate that point. I'm talking about the choice in November. I'm talking about one of the most important elections in our collective lifetime. And do we want to look at what November will bring and go on a course for America that is about a destruction of democracy, electing a man who has said he'll be a dictator on day one? Or do we want to continue on a course that's about strengthening America's economy, building and creating 15 million American jobs, over 800,000 manufacturing jobs? I got that this is the afterplay for the debate, this conversation that I'm in, and I understand why everyone wants to talk about it, but I think it's also important to recognize that the choice in November between these two people that were on the debate stage involves extraordinary stakes.
I think she can't help herself. I think the Democratic Party, they can't help themselves. Their answer to every question that people ask of them is the same one. Trump is bad. We need to focus on Trump. We need to make sure Trump doesn't get back to the White House. But what do you sacrifice when you go down that road, especially when you're trying to run a campaign? You sacrifice clarity, and the true answer that people want to hear is your solution to their problems. So instead of talking about the actual issues that Americans really care about, they're too busy focusing on Trump now and his mental acuity. But do we need another reminder when it comes to mental acuity? Because the last time I checked, he's done more media appearances, more rallies. He's done more debates than you have, Madam Vice President, and he's 78 years old. Now, you guys know how I feel about Kamala Harris, but let's hear from Alexandra Lanes, who's on X. Follow her, great commentator, by the way, and her nice, articulate take on this ridiculous plea from Kamala Harris. Check this out.
I am just simply baffled by the nerve, the audacity of Kamala Harris, who's got more accents than policies at this point, to be trying to gaslight the people about Trump's cognitive status. I know you're not demanding anybody's medical records when you hid Joe Biden's dementia for 4 years. Give me a break. You are the last person that should be judging anybody's mental cognition, coming from the woman who's been running from the fact that she is the current vice president of the United States and hence the source of all of the problems that she is now pretending she's able to solve, and one who can no more engage in a serious interview with a serious journalist than she can point to all of her accomplishments as borders are, which, if you're having trouble following along, are none. I think this sort of projection and hypocrisy is just par for the course. Trump's hiding away. Are the straws you're grasping for paper or plastic? I'd like to know. The man's been holding events in like 6 different states this week. Your team had to force you onto the media circuit where your only ability showcased were cracking open a beer and dropping a new accent. This is what I call scraping the bottom of the barrel when you've been vice president for 4 years and have nothing but failure to show for it.
Don't you love it when you hear these common sense responses to just these desperate takes from the Kamala Harris campaign? I just find it so hilarious. But hey, let's make some room for her senior advisor, Ian Sams, and what he had to say on this issue. Watch.
Can I make one point about men? Because I think you raised something. I think that if you're a man, you're not afraid to put out your medical records. If Donald Trump was a real man, he'd put out his medical records. And so I think he shouldn't be afraid to show the country his health and mental and physical fitness before this election. It's something we've been talking about for the last few days. And if he's watching, I hope he understands the importance of telling the American people whether you're up to the job by showing your health information and showing whether you can be fit.
Well, maybe Harris will ask him about it. We haven't heard that being a major issue from voters.
There's only one problem, Ian, with your statement here. He already did the job, and he did it more effectively than the current administration, which includes Kamala Harris. So we can nip that whole thing in the butt. And the second thing, he doesn't owe an explanation to voters about his mental state, because every single day he shows up in so many different ways in comparison to Kamala Harris. You guys are just now putting her out. And what you guys are doing and the frequency that you guys are doing it at is still less than former President Trump. He's doing 2 to 3 rallies in one day. She only does 1 rally a day at best. So I don't think he really owes anything. In fact, I think the burden is on her to be outperforming former President Trump. He's 78 and she's 60. Where's she at all day? Oh, and just for the record, a real man wouldn't go on the news and say, if Donald Trump was a real man, that wouldn't be the point that he would try to lead with. So having said that, Let's hear another common sense reaction to this from Scott Jennings on CNN. Watch.
If I were Harris, I wouldn't be leaning too heavily into who's hiding what kind of medical conditions of people who are or want to be the president, given her role in lying about the condition of Joe Biden for the last 4 years. That's number one. Number two, I don't think this works for her. I think I'm back in the same bucket I was earlier. You're not selling your own candidacy. You're punching Donald Trump in the same way every other Democrat we've ever heard from for the last 8-9 years has punched this guy. That's not the problem with your campaign. We've heard all the attacks on Trump. If she cannot sell her own candidacy any better than just punching on him, I'm for her. If I were in her camp, I just don't know it's going to be enough. That's my view.
Smart for the Kamala Harris campaign to continue to remind people
Honestly, just to be lectured by Democrats about you have to have mental acuity to be the president of the United States. After what we just lived through for the last 4 years,
Scott,
come
you love
on,
that talking
don't
point.
lecture me about mental acuity of
Love
the
that talking
presidency.
point.
But when Democrats are, who all, you included, who all assured us that Joe Biden was riding unicycles and juggling knives in the Oval Office, when we know that wasn't true, and Harris was the chief cheerleader for that whole, the lectures about the mental acuity, come on.
MSNBC, who clearly is an extension of the Democratic Party and her campaign, they might as well interchange these people. She should probably go on MSNBC more often because they all literally are the same individuals. But I digress. Of course, they had to come out and attack Trump over what happened, but it's just pathetic. Listen to this.
Look at you have to be demented to stand on stage and start dancing when it's a town hall. I mean, we have two sides of Donald Trump right now. One, we have just this grave threat to all that we hold dear, our Constitution, our democracy. On the same hand, I would say the principal driving force of his incompetency is the fact that he is not all there. He's a couple fries short of a Happy Meal at this point, and that's why he's standing up there dancing to the YMCA. He can barely do the YMCA if you actually check out the video. And so this is a story in a video. You don't even actually have to listen to his words. And it's just imperative at this point that the campaign pushes those two separate narratives. Grave threat and also just supremely incompetent and entering the final stages of his life. You know, I feel bad for his family right now. I know so many people have to deal with their parents as they've gone through stages of dementia, and that's clearly what they are on the precipice of having to deal with now. But he certainly should go nowhere near the Oval Office.
Okay, so I don't think we need to respond to the gibberish that came out of that gentleman's mouth. MSNBC is just so out of touch. It's crazy. If they were there in the room, then they would know that it was not like that whatsoever. And I'm not even going to defend it. Let's have ABC fact check this story. Check this out.
And we're going to do a lot of things. But then 30 minutes in, 2 attendees suffered medical emergencies.
A doctor, please. Doctor.
The incidents shifted the mood, prompting Trump to cut the questions short and instead play some of his favorite music.
How about this? We'll play YMCA and we'll go home.
Well, in certain quarters of social media, people had a field day with that. And I guess on the screens, it might have looked quite strange. Inside that hall, however, people were having a good time. What can I tell you? It did not seem out of the ordinary. It seemed almost intimate. And at the end, Trump did something he very rarely does. He came down off the stage and mingled with his supporters. He was signing autographs and shaking hands and the like.
All right, so if you're getting value from this video, do me a favor. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you want to support me further, go to the link in the description below. Grab yourself a
What's going on is the polls are coming in and they're realizing that they may very well lose this election. About grocery prices, at least, Liz, they've gone from talking about gouging to now saying, I guess the grocery clerks that are putting the prices, they are somehow putting the wrong prices and they're misleading you. Regarding Obama, I think it's pretty cheeky. Obama said the brothers are the problem, meaning the black men who are increasingly voting for Donald Trump. I guess he has that conversation, Liz, with the brothers in Martha's Vineyard when he hangs out at the barbershop and talks about what's going on in the real world.
All right, so
this is a guy who grew up in Hawaii.
Yeah,
his father got an economics degree. His father got an econ degree from Harvard. His mother had a PhD, raised by his upper middle class white grandparents in Hawaii, and he's lecturing the brothers on how they got to think about life. 20% higher grocery store prices between now and 2.5 years ago. The question is real simple. Are you better off now than you were 2.5 or 3 years ago? And the answer is not unless you're an illegal alien. You're not.
But when you look at the facts, Larry, it's like Obama rhetoric, right? Obama smearing, just coming out there with no facts, no policy fixes. He claimed that Trump inherited his good economy when Trump inherited a 1.6%, 9% GDP growth from Obama. So, when you see like the bloviating political flannel rhetoric and the facts, Larry, how do black voters take it? How do black voters on the street take it?
Well, the same way any voter takes it, they feel insulted. They can see what the prices are. Kamala Harris has no plan. She said that she couldn't think of any major issue or even minor issue where she disagreed with Joe Biden. And if you're part of the 2/3 of Americans who believe we're on the wrong track, and you hear the leader who put us on the wrong track say that I wouldn't do anything any differently, what makes you think the person who put you on the wrong track is going to put you on the right track? And at least, I guess she's downgraded now. She used to say, well, I'm from the middle class. Now she said from the working class. Next thing you know, she's going to say she was from the ghetto on food stamps. So she keeps moving the goalposts.
Listen, the way Kamala the cosplaying chameleon is trying to pander to black men all of a sudden, after realizing her years and years of destroying the lives of black men and black women in California is catching up to her, she's about to start telling black people she grew up in Bankhead, H-Town, 3rd Ward, or Compton. She's going to start making up a different hood for every speech, when she really grew up in the pristine streets of an uppity neighborhood in Canada. Now, for the first 2 months of her campaign, after she was installed as the candidate with no votes, the media was gaslighting everybody, telling us how much of a superstar she was, when just months before, they gave her nothing but negative press. They had nothing nice to say about her before, but all of a sudden, when the checks cleared and the billionaires put over $1 billion behind this Indian woman, next thing you know, she turned from the vice president they had no trust in to Wonder Woman. Well, the networks are starting to finally tell the truth about Kamala. Right now, her campaign, they already figured out the scapegoat just in case things don't go as planned. The main scapegoat will be the black men, but black women are also not supporting Kamala the way they turned out for Biden, Hillary, and Obama. Yeah, Kamala is the worst performing Democrat for president with black people since 1960. She's having an issue with all black voters, not just black men, but black women as well. And as I say all the time, men lie, women lie, numbers don't.
And sometimes there's a trend line that I never noticed before and make me go, whoa. This is one of them, all right? This is the Democratic margin among black men under the age of 45 in presidential elections. You go back to November of 2012, what do you see? You see Obama by 81. Clinton only won him by 63. Then we're all the way down to Biden last time around by 53. A tremendous drop already. And then you take a look at the average of the most recent polls, and Kamala Harris is up by only 41 points. That is about half the margin that Obama won them by back in November of 2012. And this, I think, is, when Barack Obama goes in last week when he was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, essentially talking to young black men, he made it seem like it was a Kamala Harris specific problem. This is part of a long-standing trend of young black men moving away from the Democratic Party, and Kamala Harris is just the latest to face that magnitude of younger black men going towards the Republicans.
That was most interesting here is the trend line and where some of the biggest drops happened or already happened in this case. How about black men overall?
How about black men overall? It's part of the same picture. We're looking once again at younger black men. It looks like the worst Democratic performance since 1960, since JFK versus Richard Nixon. It's the same thing among black men overall. Again, part of a similar trend, but here actually the drop-off isn't as dramatic, right? Barack Obama won him by 85. Then you see 71 with Clinton, 69. Biden, basically the same thing, holding steady. But here, again, very, very weak. Only a 54-point margin. Now, again, still winning them by a large margin, but considerably lower than what we're used to, certainly considerably lower what we had during the Obama years. The bottom line is Kamala Harris with younger black men and then black men overall putting in historically weak performance for a Democratic
candidate. Is she getting any relief with black women?
All right. So, we're talking about the trend line, right? And black women, look, she's doing better with black women than she is doing among black men. But here, there isn't a trend line almost until we get to Kamala Harris. So again, this is a black margin among black women. Look, Obama won them by 93, very large margin. Clinton won them by 93, a very large margin. Biden did a little bit worse at 85. But then you look here and you get a 71-point margin. Now, again, these are large margins. But the bottom line is when you're talking about the base of the Democratic Party, you would think that Kamala Harris would do very well among black women based upon history. And of course, she would be the first black woman president. But she's actually doing the worst for a Democratic candidate among black women since 1960, if this holds true.
And again, when you look at the numbers here, whenever you come in, looking at the trends is probably the most important thing.
You got it, my friend.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And no, Mr. Political Weatherman, she is not the first black woman, nothing. She's Hindu. If she wants, she'll be the first Asian president. Let's get that right. But what you're seeing right here is that she's getting nowhere near the support that Biden, Hillary, or Obama got with black women. She's doing the worst with black women since 1960. Hillary and Obama in 2012 and 2016, they got the same amount of support from black women. Joe Biden, he wasn't that far away from them. It was only an 8-point difference. But do you see that huge drop between Biden and now Kamala? This is with black women. Listen, like I said before, every black woman is not a part of the boule. Every black woman is not a feminist. And every black woman is not AKA or with the Divine Nine. And quiet as it's kept, I've seen a lot of people a part of the Divine Nine, especially the ones who watch this channel. They're not with her either. This is what you're seeing. She's hurting really bad with black women too, compared to everybody before her. That should tell you something.
So I just got this one question for Barack Obama. When you gonna talk to the white man? When you gonna talk to the Hispanic man and the Asian man and the all the other racist men out here in America that are voting? When are you gonna talk to them about who they need to vote for? I really can't stand this. I really don't understand why black people of certain caliber or status who think they're quote unquote better than us regular black folks, these type of black folks, the celebrities included, why do they feel like they can talk to the black people the way they want to talk to black people? Like we supposed to just fall in line. Are we they Negroes now? Are we their Negroes?
What you thought you was doing, Barack Obama? Boy, you didn't step out there. All you did was piss black men off, bruh. All you did was piss black men off. Why y'all think the American people why y'all think the Democrat Party own black folk? The Democrat Party don't own black folks, bruh. What you thought you was doing with that? We see the play. We know, we see the play. Kamala Harris is losing. She's not gonna win. So you done stepped on out. Yeah, you know, black people, if you're voting for Donald Trump and not Kamala Harris, this is unacceptable. Man, look, check this out. This is what I gotta say to you. 1, 2, Trump is coming for you. 3, 4, you won't win no more. 5, 6, the election was fixed. 7, 8, y'all made a mistake. 9, 10, Trump is coming again. 9, 10, Trump is coming again. Bam!
I believe it's a wrap and they all know it. That's why the media is finally coming out telling the truth about these numbers. Then you have the campaign trying to set black people up to blame us when this is all on them. We're talking about years and years of benign neglect and disrespect. Running around here talking about what they're not going to do for us when they're the ones who needed us the whole time.
So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit black people.
We put in work, we want credit for it.
I just wonder when it's all said and done, will the Democrats continue to ignore us, like they did all these years, or will they finally see that black folks are serious? But here's another point. Could it possibly be too late for them? Are black folks leaving and never coming back? Now that's what they should really be worried about. Let's go ahead and get the conversation started. Tell me what you think about this below. Special thank you to Edmund.
Columbus, Ohio, Dayton, Ohio, Cincinnati, Lexington, Burbank, California, and Honolulu. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for those tickets. Don't go anywhere else.
Case in Georgia not very long ago, didn't you? They made an ad about a
young woman who'd been killed by an immigrant. Yeah, well, if they'd all been properly vetted, that probably wouldn't have happened. But if they all properly vetted, and that doesn't happen, and America is not having enough babies to keep our populations up. So we need immigrants that have been vetted to do work.
So what he just did there was he did an ad for Donald Trump, because he's saying that Kamala Harris, the border czar, and Joe Biden as president were letting in undocumented immigrants without vetting them. He's saying we need immigrants that are vetted. That's what Trump has always said. He's for legal immigration. Everyone's for legal immigration. He's there doing a commercial for Donald Trump, saying we have to stop illegal immigration. That's what he's saying. And then he adds the lie at the end that we need immigrants to do work because we aren't making enough babies in America. That's not why they need immigrants to do work. They need immigrants to come in and do work because they're more desperate than Americans.
We're not making enough babies, but you telling all the black people to abort their babies. These devils.
And they'll work for lower wages, and that suppresses the wages of Americans. So that's the lie. That's the bullshit. Like, oh, we need immigrants to do work because we're not making babies. No, you need immigrants to lower the wages of Americans.
Y'all unalive.
That's what the big lie is. Here, I'll play it for you again.
In Georgia not very long ago, didn't you? They made an ad about it.
Won't make babies.
Young woman who'd been killed by an immigrant. Yeah, well, if they'd all been properly vetted, that probably wouldn't have happened. But if they all properly vetted, and that doesn't happen, and America is not having enough babies to keep our populations up. So we need immigrants that have been vetted to do work. There wouldn't be a problem. And he couldn't keep people all torn up and upset.
And he couldn't keep people talk about Trump. Yeah, he couldn't keep people upset if actually Kamala Harris and Joe Biden vetted the immigrants who came in and didn't just open the border. He's doing a commercial for Donald Trump.
See, you can't listen to nothing. Bill Clinton is the man who told Trump to run for president on the golf course. They was playing golf, and Bill Clinton said, you know what, you should run. Now, some people like myself think that old Willie was very slick and didn't want Hillary to win. He wanted to be the only president in their goddamn family. And with no way in hell he was going to let his wife get presidential powers and he have to hear that shit in his goddamn household. He told Trump to run. So whatever Bill like, oh, he's a dictator, he's a racist, he's a bigot. That was your golf buddy. See, these people are finessers. He was at your daughter's wedding. So that's what the Democrats need to understand. When they blame people for Trump, why don't you blame Bill Clinton? Because he the one told Trump to run for president.
He's doing a commercial for Donald Trump. Anyway, do we have so there you go.
Can I hear it one more time?
Sure. Kamala Harris has officially lost Saturday Night Live. They're making fun of her. Did you see? Yeah.
Georgia not very long ago, didn't you? They made an ad about a young woman who'd been killed by an immigrant. Yeah, well,
he got his hunting hat on. See, he the only one ain't playing like a hunter though. He a real killer. Bill Clinton with a ski mask on. See, I know when you talk about Bill, your life is on the line. Bill is a real gangster. Him and Hillary. The whole world know that Bill is a mafioso. But we also know that he was in that blue dress in Jeffrey Epstein's house, and Epstein got a picture of that. So even the killer, Bill Clinton, was honey trapped and set up and compromised by Epstein.
If they'd all been properly vetted, that probably wouldn't have happened. But if they all properly vetted, and that doesn't happen, and America is not having enough babies to keep our populations up.
That's not true.
So we need immigrants that have been vetted to do work.
That's a lot. Why European Americans are not having enough babies. Europeans in general are not having enough babies. And some Asian populations like Japan and a few of them not having enough babies. It is a lie. Say the American population, there you go, line on black people, you're aborting our babies. See, this is people should bring that up. Bill, what are you talking about, brother? We having plenty of babies. We didn't know you wanted babies to do the work. You've been telling us to Planned Parenthood. They're not telling that to. They're not telling migrants to Planned Parenthood. Yeah, this is good right here. This is good because he said we need the migrants because they're gonna have the babies. Oh, you're not gonna tell them to Planned Parenthood? They should wait till they get settled and they get their life together before they have any babies? Hell no. They saving that for you know who.
There wouldn't be a problem. And he couldn't keep people all torn up and upset.
So that's a commercial for Donald Trump and his immigration policy over Kamala Harris's immigration policy. And also he makes the lie that we need immigrants to come do work. We don't. Right now, half the country doesn't think they can afford a house. So there's not enough housing as it is in America. They just let in 10 million more people. Did they build 10 million more houses? No. So he doesn't tell you that part. Like, well, it's going to keep jacking up everyone's housing prices. And we're not making enough babies. So really? So there are people, why is it every McDonald's and Burger King and Kentucky Fried Chicken that's open, they have employees? I don't see any places closing down because they can't find employees. What he wants to do is drive their wages down because unions are starting to catch on in America again because workers are struggling so much that unions are catching on at Starbucks, at Amazon. They just want the port workers just want a big victory.
Boy, they made that go away so
just
fast.
Like that.
How suspicious is that?
Yeah,
they did not want it to catch on because they didn't want everybody else to unify behind them.
That's right. They don't want people to see, oh, if we unify, we have power.
You know, because he made that case by saying it's going to affect the guy who's selling a car.
That's right.
Because there are no cars
everybody.
coming in.
That's right. And that's the show. Like, hey, if workers band together, they have power. And so what they want to do is flood the country with more desperate people so that that upends union organization, that suppresses wages, all that stuff.
You know, it's kind of interesting, Jimmy, you know, when he was saying, like, because we're not making enough babies. And I'm like, well, so are you also dependent on that immigrant class to have more babies to create more slave labor?
See?
Right?
Yes,
because there's no solution.
That's exactly what he's saying.
There's no solution.
See? If Bill Clinton is saying they need the immigrants to have more babies so they can work, well, why the hell are they telling this is a scandal? Why I'm gonna do something just on that? But why are they telling black people Planned Parenthood until abort our babies? And they're not telling that to the migrants. That's red flag right there. He just said, we're not having enough babies, so we need the migrant babies. That's a lie. Black people having plenty of babies. You're just telling us to abort them.
For my friends who want to have kids, you know, they want to have kids, but they said, I think 10 years ago, I read a piece of statistic that said it takes $300,000 to raise a kid to 18 years old. And I don't see, you know, our wages haven't changed. Gosh, weren't you just saying Americans haven't had a wage increase in the 1980s? Isn't that something that you'd said?
Well, workers used to be, the more productive workers were, the more profit they generated for their company. And then the higher the wage for the worker. So wages used to be coupled with productivity and profits. In the 80s, when Reagan became president, that got decoupled. So workers kept becoming more and more productive and earning more and more profits for their companies, but their wages didn't increase. So that happened in the early 80s. And it's been that way ever since. So in real wage terms, Americans are making less money now than they did in the 80s. For sure. Half the country can't afford a goddamn $400 emergency. Half the country can't afford a house. What does that tell you? So that's what I mean.
And the housing prices in, you know.
We just seen that during the hurricane that was coming to Florida, where a lot of black people, a lot of single mothers, black mothers in general, they said they couldn't even move or relocate because they didn't have money for rooms and things of that nature.
California,
because there isn't enough housing. They just let in 10 million more people and they didn't increase the housing. And they let foreign investment in real estate, which they shouldn't. They shouldn't allow billionaires from China to buy property in the United States and let it sit dormant. They shouldn't do that. Hey, come see us on tour. We'll be in Tempe, Arizona, Los Angeles, Columbus, Ohio, Dayton, Ohio,
Just a field. Yeah.
Hey, it's Jordan. I am in Detroit, and we're in a pretty special place, the King Solomon
Historical
King Solomon Church. You told me before this was where Malcolm X and Martin Luther King had his first.
I Have a Dream speech here, was done here before he went to Washington. Wow. And Malcolm X, his house had got bombed the day before, and he flew out to come here the next day and to give the message to the grassroots.
Wow. So pretty,
very
pretty
historic.
Special place.
Yes, where all of the UAW people used to work. You used to come here if you wanted a job in the plants, because the pastors at that time here in Detroit were very instrumental in getting workers to go into Ford, Chrysler, General Motors, and all of that. Yes.
So how does this connect then to the presidential election? Because Trump came here the other day and basically crapped on Detroit.
He wasn't lying, honey. He told the truth.
Tell me more. But if you don't know, Trump came here and he warned that if Kamala Harris gets elected, then America is going to be Detroit.
In Detroit, we know what's happening here. We know that we get overtaxed on property. We know, and from that, a lot of people have moved out. I live on a street called Phillip. It's 5 people on my block for houses live. All of the rest of it is just a field. Yes, but if you ride around the city of Detroit, I ride around the city of Detroit a lot because I have family and friends and other meetings and different places I go. And the places that I go now, it looked like a war zone where families live. You took the jobs away from us. If you take the jobs and the schools, who's going to stay?
I remember one of the first times I went to Flint, and Flint and Detroit are very similar. I thought I was driving through a forest.
You did?
It was just empty lots. The grass was up to here, and a lot of abandoned homes.
And you don't have a lot of money a lot of times to keep your own property clean because the jobs, are not here. And people say, oh, they can keep their jobs. I said, listen, you don't know those people's situation. So don't knock them. I know how Detroit used to be. I was just telling, we all grew up in the same neighborhood. I'm the youngest. So anyway, but they...
you all seem about 40.
Really? That's a good thing. So we know how neighborhoods were. The children growing up now, they will never know how a neighborhood or community was.
Right, where we had a village.
We really had a village where we grew up. So, I could go where both of my grandparents lived in the community that I grew up. So I could go over that granddad, it was my granddad. My grandmother's passed when I was young. So I could go to this granddad, I could go to that granddad, I could go to cousins and aunties and uncles, Now everybody is so far away, you can't even get the bus to their house because the buses don't run that often.
I'm actually going to be talking to Brother Cunningham because transportation's a big problem here. The
buses
buses don't come on time.
He was.
Which one? He was? Yeah.
Let me see.
I think he's out.
He might be out now. Yeah, because you talking about the Cunningham who has
he
was
rides
giving
people
out.
around.
Yes. He is. We had a guy. Let me tell you about it. He worked with us with what's our man's name who just passed? We said they killed him. He had 2 tethers on. Bob Carmack.
Yeah.
Bob Carmack. If you ever knew Bob Carmack, he was a people's person. They had taken his property from him down. I guess this was like on the waterfront or something. But Bob Carmack was very instrumental in trying to get the media's attention on what was going on in the city of Detroit, trying to expose Duggan and his shenanigans. Right. So he hired a helicopter one time to fly across Tiger Stadium and asked the lady who he said he didn't know to marry him while he was married.
Sure, his wife liked that.
And so then he claimed, so because he said he didn't know the lady. Okay, then they find pictures with him, not actually with the lady, but showing them in the same vicinity. So then Carmack got he got a truck or a van, and you know, one of them TV monitors. He followed the mayor to her house, well, their house or whoever, and he had the key, and he went in to the house, but he said he didn't know the woman. So that kind of exposed it.
Gotcha.
Saying he's saying he lived here, but you got a key to somebody else's house.
Right.
You know, so that was a lot of stuff. But that's another person. Bob Carmack's passed a few months ago. He was going to city council. He was going everywhere, but they put 2 tethers on him, saying that he had been drunk driving. But how long do you keep them on there? For 2 years?
Wow.
And the key wasn't even in their ignition. So they said it was attempting to drive.
Now, let me ask you, because a lot of the audience would say, all right, if all this stuff is happening under Democrats, then, I mean, I'm not saying vote for Trump, but why you got the Kamala signs here? Do you think Kamala is going to improve the situation
No,
here?
I don't. How? They not. Listen, she in there right now. Okay, whatever you can do in the last, how many days they have? Because they have, what do you call it? What you call it when
executive order?
right. So
what can she do now to stop what's going on?
You can do something with the exist, like you can release people out of prison at your end of your term. You can have some kind of executive power to do something. We've been over.
Revolutionary salute to our brother Vincent Brown. Scott for the donation to the war chest. Revolution is a way of life. I absolutely appreciate the love, family. Salute.
Tax, give us our money back. I don't know how that would work, but it's something that, but what I know, one thing they can do is they are in charge of the federal budget, right?
Absolutely.
So the federal minimum wage is $10 an hour.
Federal minimum wage is $7.25.
I thought I'm talking about
when I look.
The federal workers don't make $10.
Federal government workers,
Right,
do, but the
okay.
federal minimum
Right,
wage
but the
is
federal government
$7.25.
workers, you can raise that to 15 right now.
Mhm.
That's my ask.
Mhm.
But I don't know if it would happen.
Well, we know Biden ran on raising $15, raising it to 15, and then right away they kind of didn't fight
That's
on that.
correct. Now, I that's what I started out doing in the union, was to fight for 15. And it took a lot of work to even get people to talk about raising anything, you know, other than 725. So as we were going out, people were saying, oh, I'm not going to pay any workers to $15 an hour at McDonald's. I'm like, well, McDonald's is a 60 or $70 billion corporation.
Mm-hmm.
And if I have to foot the bills for their workers, because they have a resource center to teach their workers how to apply for housing, medical assistance,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and food assistance. So why should we have to foot the bill for McDonald's when they have enough money to pay?
Same thing with Amazon workers.
At Walmart,
Mhm.
yes, you know, so yeah.
I mean, in Michigan, if you're going to win, whether you're president, Senate, Congress, whatever office, you got to do good. If you're a Democrat in Detroit, Wayne County, and right now I'm hearing different things. I'm hearing black men in particular seem to be moving over in some numbers to Trump, and I'm hearing a lot of people are kind of just done with both parties.
That's right.
Exactly. Yeah, because it appears that the corporation is running both parties. So I don't know. But I do feel that under the Democrats, we are seeing less representative. We got more poverty. We got more crime and drug inflicted communities. Our schools are being raped. Children are being pimped. It's sad, you know.
So do you feel that in a way, it's not necessarily you think Republicans would be much better, but if this is happening under Democrats, then people either don't vote or just say,
how do you get it independent enough to wake up the people to start a party that's going to work for the people and not the corporations? Because right now, to me, they the same bird, the same feather, the same plane.
The right, the left, but the same bird.
and have you seen media report on the other options, you know, the third party candidates like Jill Stein, who talks about a lot of these things? You don't really hear that there are other options in the media.
All right. Well, that's because they are not they don't get it out on the stations that people mostly look at, you know. So I don't know. You know, I just feel sometimes that I'm in a no-win situation, you know. But I know that it's not going to get any better under the Democrats, because we've been had them for, I know, 20 something years, and I haven't seen anything. I lived through right to work. I done lived through the riot. I done lived through all of the police brutality in the city of Detroit, and all of this was under Democrats. You know, so
are you feeling for yourself that you would consider Trump, or?
I would consider, and I voted libertarian, you know, so I know on this election we can pick and choose, because this is the general. You don't have to do straight party. You can go, you know, libertarian, you can go Democrat, Republican. So I think that is good. So sometimes I have voted for Republicans before. I've helped Republican judges, you know, and they've been doing a great job. I have to say, you know, while they been on the bench. Some of the Democrat judges have been doing pretty good, but they can't just do it by themselves, you know.
And, you know, to me, what it sounds like here is people just feel beaten down. And when you feel beaten down, you're not going to go rah, rah if the Democrats offering you, you know, tax credits or a lot of the things being offered are
reimbursement. I paid my school loan off, so.
And if you have the choice of the lesser evil, to me, evil is evil. So what you're gonna like this poison? It's a little stronger than the other poison. Really? That's our choice now?
And you said at the beginning that you two disagree. So are you on their wavelength in terms of not feeling so strong about voting for Harris?
Only because Donald Trump is really an asshole.
I agree. I grew up in New York.
Hey, I'm really quiet and low key. You know, I take everything in, but the main goal for the next 30 days or however many days is to get the vote out and vote correctly. Because many are saying they're voting for neither one. They're going to vote uncommitted.
And Rashida did a good job, I'm going to tell you, to get those 100,000 people to vote uncommitted. Now, what I can say about Rashida is she is a great organizer. I met I met her when she was working for Sugar Law, because I was working for SEIU at the time. And so we used to have the Sugar Law people come out and, you know, look at the rallies and stuff like that, make sure we was doing everything correctly. She would come out and train the people on how to act in the media and different stuff like that. So Rashida, to me, you know, a lot of people say because she is an Arabic descent, but hey, I'm African American. So if I ever get anything, they're gonna be my first priority. I'm just saying, right? And that's just how I am. Now, I can't say everybody else is like me, but I know that if I ever get anything or any position, the first thing because I know my people, I know what they need. So like her, she knows her people and she knows what they need. And that's what she fights for.
And that's bigger than the election. We're talking about, you know, who knows, 50, 60, some numbers say 200,000 people have died in Gaza. And all we're hearing from Biden and Harris is ceasefire, but, you know, they're controlling the check. Really.
Right. You know, if you're going to cease fire now. And that's what I want. I don't want nobody else to die. I don't care who I do not want them to die.
And I wonder, just for you two, so, you know, I guess psychologically, you've probably been canvassing and busting your butt for the last 20, 30 years for Democrats. So it must be kind of like,
it's so disappointing. You know, it's like, wow, we've been floating out there for somebody just to find out all these details and information that we didn't have at hand before. And so now that we had this information, you got to stand back and say, wow, you know, our community is not growing. It's not surviving. It's not thriving. It's swindling. It's impoverished. It's crime ridden. It's not represented.
everywhere I go, whether it's Detroit, Flint, Cleveland, all these cities, the same pattern is there's like 5 to 10 blocks that are amazing and beautiful, bars, restaurants, cultural centers, sporting stadiums. And then you drive like 10 minutes down the road and it looks like a third world country in some parts.
You can go to Grosse Pointe. I live 2 blocks from Grosse Pointe. On the opposite side of the street, it's very nice. You look on my side of the street, you see deers and stuff that not even supposed to be here. No houses, vegetation that's dwindled away. It's horrible.
Vacant land and war-torn zones.
Right. Because and Grosse Pointe is one of our very exclusive neighborhoods, you know. And I see the work that they do in Grosse Pointe. If someone that water when our basement's flooded. I mean flooded and flooded. You know what Grosse Pointe did? They done built them a whole new station in a matter of a year.
Well, did you know that after the Flint water disaster went national, the governor, Snyder at the time, he preemptively replaced all of the lead pipes in Ann Arbor.
Of course.
They didn't have a problem.
Right.
But he took out the pipes. Flint, 10 years later, they still
don't have it. And you have to change all the pipes. People don't know. You have to change your inside your home. You got, because that corrosion went into there. So it's, even if you got outside clean pipes, they come through that corrosion. You got to change your dishwasher, your sink faucets, everything up under your sink.
We were just there a couple of weeks ago for my book, and people are showing me rashes now, 10 years later. People are posting online brown water 10 years later.
So has the Democrats here done anything for them in Flint? No, they have
You
not.
just answered the question.
Have the Republicans done anything for the people in Flint? No, they haven't.
Don't vote for Donald Trump.
She said, "Don't vote for Donald Trump." Well, I want to touch on that because
Right.
I don't like Donald Trump at all.
I like Donald Trump now since I met him. If you ain't never met him, you know, we went to the 180 church. They didn't get in. I did. But anyway, when I've seen it. I mean, I didn't think that he was a radical person or talk about people, because they take snippets of what he says out of what he's really trying to talk about. You know, he met with all of those African-American business owners and some community people there, because I had never met. When I want to know something, I go to the source. That's just me. I wanted to meet him and see how he operate outside of what the media was portraying him. I worked in New York, so when he was giving out the $200 to go, when he first started and was coming down the elevator, remember that? I didn't know how to get over there, because I knew how to get on the subway, but I was going to go over there and get me that $200 just to see. But I mean, you would hear stuff. They did Barack horrible when he first ran too. They called him all kind of names, took snippets out of this and stuff. And not saying, but I know that that's how they do.
Well, the problem with Trump, there's many. Trump is what this is.
Okay.
I mean, he got all the goodies as a developer.
Well, he said change the tax code.
He didn't pay taxes.
Change the tax
and
code.
As president, the main thing he did was give tax breaks to rich people. But
Okay.
I want to get on because she's saying, you know, she's not exactly saying rah rah Kamala. She's saying don't vote for Trump. But the problem is people are tired of this same situation of lesser of two evils.
Correct.
And when you have that continually lesser of two evils, people just tune out. That's why Hillary in 2016, she underperformed here because less people voted. So I feel like that might be what you see, either a drop in voter turnout, or people vote uncommitted, or people vote third party. And who do the Democrats have to blame if that happens other than themselves?
Just don't vote for Donald Trump. That's very important. Don't vote for Donald Trump. It is time for a change, and it is time for a miracle. And we just need to try something new.
Can you tell us the latest on your colleague, Jeremy Lafredo, and his travails in Israel with the IDF?
Well, for those who don't know, Jeremy Lafredo was in Israel, Palestine, arrived soon after the Iranian missile attacks on Israel, the Iranian retaliatory missile attacks, which I believe were October 1st. And he went to report on them, as any reporter would, and covered the locations of the strikes. The thing is, Jeremy wasn't doing anything particularly unique, although his video was very thorough and well produced. A reporter from PBS, Nick Schifrin, who presumably was credentialed by the Israeli government, had already reported the location of a missile crater outside Mossad headquarters. And Jeremy also went outside, well outside the Nevatim air base in southern Israel, to show the remains of a ballistic missile. Didn't do anything else beyond that, and was arrested days later with 4 other reporters at a West Bank checkpoint by the Israeli military. They abused these reporters. Some of them were roughed up. One apparently had guns held to his head at one point by the soldiers. They were, taunted, humiliated. Then after 11 hours, all the reporters except for Jeremy were let go. And Jeremy was accused by the Israeli police of supporting an enemy during wartime because he showed the locations of these missile strikes, as so many other journalists, including Israeli journalists, had. Jeremy has been before 2 Israeli magistrate judges. Both ruled that he did not violate military censorship policies and called for his release, but Israel's holding him in the country till at least October 20th. He's since been interrogated twice about his video. And it's not clear to me what they could possibly accuse him of. In fact, an Israeli reporter from the most mainstream publication in Israel, Ynet, came forward and testified that he published Jeremy's entire video in his article and that it cleared military censorship policy. So I have no idea what they could possibly have on him. Every publication, Washington Post, New York Times, even Ynet, has published satellite images showing where the Iranian missiles struck. But the Israeli police seem to be trying to claim that Jeremy, by showing these locations, somehow aided Iran and therefore aided an enemy. And I think this is just completely political. It's about targeting Jeremy. It's about targeting possibly even the gray zone. And the U.S. State Department has not called for his release.
Wow. Compare this to, what's the name of the fellow from the Wall Street Journal? Evan Gershkovich,
yeah,
who had been arrested by the Russians, according to Ritter and others, with substantial evidence of receiving national security secrets. Another topic for another time. Did Jeremy publish anything that hadn't already been published and cleared? Did Jeremy publish anything that was even arguably a national security secret?
No, I mean, he published Google Map coordinates of the locations of 2 strikes that he visited. But let's say Iran was trying to recalibrate their strikes. Then all they have to do is geolocate the strikes using open source intelligence based on the images that were in his video, but were also in PBS videos and so many other videos, or in the social media videos. But other outlets went even further, including the Israeli Ynet. They published satellite images of where the missiles hit, as did the New York Times and the Washington Post. So there is no basis for this investigation into Jeremy, and they keep calling him in for a new interrogation every day. They're holding his phone. They've invaded his phone. They're holding his laptop. They're holding his passport, and they're holding his wallet, so he has no access to finances. And again, the State Department, while they're monitoring this case, and they seem to be showing up at the various hearings, they haven't called for his release as they would for Evan Gershkovich.
What did the IDF do to him? Was it abuse? Was it torture? Was it confinement alone?
I mean, it seems that some of the other reporters were more harshly abused. There was a female reporter with him, and the soldiers said to her in Hebrew that they wished that Hamas had raped her. Another reporter had 2 guns drawn on him. Another reporter produced a physical evidence of that he was beaten, showing bruises on his body. Jeremy was blindfolded harshly, and kind of roughed up and insulted and taken around. But right now it's more like they're attempting to play some kind of psychological games because they don't have a case. There's nothing there.
Do they know that he's an American, and do they know that he works with the gray zone?
I assume so. I know they know he's an American. And does the State Department know he's an American? Because who's representing us here?
Yeah.
Where does Greater Israel start and where does it end? Because if this had happened inside official enemy territory, North Korea or Russia, and Jeremy was doing something much more provocative, I don't know what that could have consisted of. I guarantee the State Department would be making this a massive international cause and putting it front and center at the heart of the Biden campaign's crusade for press freedom. But the response so far has been absolutely muted, where the State Department, in its only public statement about the only U.S. reporter who has been detained, arrested, and investigated by Israel since October 7th, all they've said is they're monitoring the situation. Is this because the State Department doesn't like us because we've asked tough questions of them at State Department briefings?
Probably.
So does the State Department represent American citizens based on political prejudice? These are now pertinent questions. And I think everybody who's monitoring this case, and that includes the Committee to Protect Journalists, Freedom of the Press Foundation, and multiple outlets, international outlets, want to know, will the State Department defend its citizen against a country that has previously targeted and killed U.S. citizens who are journalists like Shireen Abu Akleh?
Switching to a slightly different topic, what happened at the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital?
Well, this is a hospital in Deir al-Balah, which is one of the last public hospitals still functioning. And what we see there is what we've seen around other hospitals in Gaza that Israel doesn't like, which is that people gather in tents around the hospital because they see it as a place of safety where they can get services. Everybody's sick in Gaza, and Israel bombed those tent encampments. And while the death toll wasn't as massive as, for example, the bombing in December in the Maghazi refugee camp that just killed 250 people in one blow for no apparent reason, this set several tents on fire and burned people alive on camera, including a young man who was 18 who had just graduated from medical school a month before and had been writing in his diary about how many times he had cheated death. And you can see him just being burned alive on camera in a really clear, harrowing image that distills the Holocaust that people are living through in Gaza. And I think so many people on social media were captivated by this image, and it's why we're talking about it now.
Here's a journalist whom you may know describing what she saw, cut number 9.
They burned people alive. I don't know. They picked this missile to cause this fire at this time of the night to kill people while they are sleeping. And then these people are waking up, watching their bodies burning, turning into black, and having their last breath in front of the camera. That's what happened. They did this. They did this. I know that you will not be able to watch the videos, to watch the pictures, to hear them screaming while they are burning and no one can do anything for them. But the Israeli army did this.
Do you know her or have any reason to doubt or support her eyewitness testimony?
Well, that's Bisan Auda, who has been doing a lot of first-person testimony, but also documentation of crimes people in Gaza have suffered since October 7th, and her videos and reporting, which has been good as any reporters, probably more courageous than most Western reporters, has won an Emmy. Despite major objections from the Israel lobby. She won a major award for her work. So I think it was an Emmy. It might have been a Pulitzer Prize, but she's been widely awarded. But we don't need to rely on her testimony. The video is there for everyone to see. The images are there, and it's just an image that captures what has happened to Gaza. I mean, the term the Holocaust was sort of chosen to market the very real genocide that Jews experienced in the Holocaust, but Jews experienced in Europe during World War II. Jews experienced this alongside Roma people, alongside Russians who were targeted by fascist forces, alongside dissidents, so many other people. But this term was chosen to particularize the Jewish genocide and to market it. And it's been weaponized by Zionist forces in order to advance or in order to legitimize Israel's existence as a Jewish ethno-supremacist or exclusivist project, and weaponized to shut down those who want to publicize the crimes against Palestinians. But we can clearly see, if you look at the definition of the word Holocaust, which simply refers to a massive conflagration that consumes life, that is what people in Gaza are living through and dying through right now. And the young man who was consumed in flames on video was someone who really represented the hope of Gaza, who wanted to heal people in his life, who had just completed a medical degree, who was the pride of his family. He was not a terrorist, as Israel alleges when it claims it attacked a Hamas command and control center. So this is really, we're really getting to the essence of what Israel is doing in Gaza here.
Recently, 4 young IDF soldiers, each age 19, were killed when a Hezbollah drone hit a dining hall at an Israeli military facility, and about 70 Israeli IDF were injured. These numbers are minuscule compared to the slaughter that Israel has caused.
Yeah.
But how impactful, if at all, has this been inside Israel?
Well, it speaks to the capabilities of Hezbollah after Israel had 2 or 3 weeks of triumphalism following the pager attacks, following the assassination of Hassan Nasrallah, and his chosen apparent successor, Hisham Safieddin, as well as an IRGC high-ranking officer. That it turns out, as I knew, that Hezbollah wasn't crippled at all, and that it still maintained capacity to do serious damage inside Israel. And it hasn't bent, as we see from the statement that Hezbollah's leadership has issued today, it hasn't bent from its central demand, which is a ceasefire in Gaza. If there's a ceasefire in Gaza, they go north of the Litani River, according to UN agreements, and that's the end of it. Hezbollah had intelligence, not only on the location of this base in Binyamina between Tel Aviv and Haifa, but on what was taking place there, which was a luncheon for the Golani Brigade, which has caused so many atrocities in Gaza and which is now fighting in southern Lebanon. And they had also learned that apparently Army Chief of Staff Herzl Halevi was to be on site. The drone attack was sophisticated. It penetrated Israel's multi-layered anti-aircraft defenses. One drone attacked first with a rocket and then conducted a suicide drone attack and struck the base. This was consistent with Hezbollah's doctrine, which is to attack military targets. They're targeting military targets across Israel according to the intelligence they've acquired. So Hezbollah is still standing. It's still on its feet. It's not going away. And anybody who says that or thinks that Israel can wipe it out when it has failed to wipe out a much weaker force in Hamas in Gaza over the course of more than a year, there is just completely delusional. And how is Israel responding? It attacked a Christian village in northern Lebanon, killing, I think, over 20. It is attacking in the Bekaa Valley, in Saida, killing civilians. And it continues to conduct its Holocaust of children in the Gaza Strip, but it cannot end Hezbollah as a military viable force.
I want to talk to you about the use by Israel of Western journalists to propagate its propaganda. And we'll start with something I know you're familiar with, Chris, cut number 10.
On October 7th, as news of the Hamas military attack on Israel started to emerge, the Israeli PR machine went into overdrive. Its propaganda blitz was predictable, and its objective was clear: shock the Western public into supporting Israel's plan to carry out the wholesale destruction of the besieged Gaza Strip. In its campaign to manufacture consent for mass death, the Israeli government found no greater ally than the unquestioning marionettes that serve as the faces and voices of U.S. mainstream media.
At least 40 babies were killed. Some of them their heads cut off. He said he's never seen acts of brutality like this.
They cut head of children.
Others and children, and yes, they cut off heads. They cut off heads.
Israeli Prime Minister's spokesman just confirmed babies and toddlers were found with their heads decapitated.
Stomach-turning reports of babies being killed.
Babies and adults decapitated, babies and adults burnt to death.
Behead babies, burn women, literally decimate them.
Dozens of children bound them up, burned them, and executed them.
A boy and girl, 6 and 8 years old, and their parents. The father, his eye gouged out in front of his kids. The mother's breast cut off. The girl's foot amputated. The boy's fingers cut off before they were executed.
She was pregnant woman. Stomach is butchered up, and a knife is still stacked in that baby.
Little kids who are beheaded. We didn't know which head belongs to which kid. Bastards put these babies in an oven and put on their oven.
They baked their baby in the oven and kept the woman alive so that she could hear the screams of her child melting.
The little children that were put in the oven.
Women sexually assaulted and brutally killed.
Pregnant women cut open. Guys, the things that happen are so sick.
פצח אותם, אנס אותם. הרגליים שלהם היו פתוחות. מישהו הפשיד אותם, מישהו אנס אותם.
חותך נטשת וזורק את זה על הכביש, הם משחקים עם זה.
These depraved savages raped women, murdered children, and executed entire families, burning some of them alive.
Sheer evil.
They are savages. Hamas is ISIS.
אנחנו מטילים מצור מוחלט על העיר עזה. אין
ISIS
חשמל, אין מזון, אין מים, אין דלק. הכל סגור. אנחנו נלחמים בחיות אדם ואנחנו נוהגים בהתאם.
This is, of course, the trailer to your excellent documentary, Atrocity, Inc., how Israel sells its slaughter of Gaza. Who's behind all of those? Well, was any of that true?
Absolutely nothing you saw in that trailer except what I said was true.
It was all lies.
And by this point, it should be self-evident, except that you have Kamala Harris and so many other major national politicians across the West still stating these lies that have been debunked, even retracted by the White House, retracted by major publications, debunked by Israeli media. So I thought it was necessary to make this film, to release it on October 7th and show how the media colluded with apartheid Israel in a campaign to shock the Western public into supporting what was stated from the beginning to be a genocide, to besiege the quote unquote human animals, as the Israeli defense minister put it. The warning signs were all there about what Israel was planning to do. and the media helped them create the space to do it. And now they're all shocked at what Israel's done, and they're all pulling back, or they're silent about it. But they need to be held accountable. And so I made this. I documented how the lies were debunked, where they went wrong. One thing I focused on in particular was the New York Times article we've talked about before, Judge, which was sort of the culmination of the hoax that Israel rolled out, alleging that Hamas carried out systematic sexual assault on Israeli women on October 7th. And the New York Times hasn't really issued a cohesive public statement explaining how that article got everything wrong. And they haven't really meted out accountability to the key author, Jeffrey Gettleman. But today, the New York Times issued a long statement standing by a correct and good article, investigative piece it did, but at great length, with great detail, explaining why it was standing by this article, which documented how over 50 children in Gaza had been taken into the hospital with bullet wounds to their heads, shot by Israeli snipers. Why is that? It's because they respond to the Israel lobby and to its pressure, but they're not going to respond to us when we expose how the New York Times actually did the bidding of the Israel lobby in creating political space so that the snipers could shoot those kids in the head. And that's what it did by pushing the mass rape hoax.
How did the Israeli government get all of these mainstream media figures, some of whom I've known for years, to make all these outlandish, unfounded, untrue, horrific statements?
Number one, sort of anti-Palestinian racism courses through the veins of mainstream American newsrooms, and they assume that Hamas are a bunch of barbaric savages, as Israel says they are, and that they would have done all of these things, and that they don't have political objectives, and that there is no historical or political context to the October 7th attack or military objective. Number two, there is the passionate attachment to Israel and to Zionism is very strong within modern American newsrooms, particularly among older journalists and especially among upper management. And that was definitely the case at the New York Times, where you had a manager and a publishing family that were pro-Israel, even when there were elements in the newsroom that were actually disgusted by what Israel was doing. And then you had this hack, Jeffrey Gettleman, who goes in and gets like an Israeli fixer who is named Anat Schwartz, who was later fired for pro-genocide tweets, which I guess the New York Times failed to vet, who had never written an article before, who was the aunt of the other fixer he relied upon, who was an Israel-based food blogger. And these characters slapped together one of the biggest pieces of journalistic malpractice in recent history, manufacturing consent for a genocide, and they still haven't retracted it or even issued the kind of public statement they have to do when they're coming under Israel lobby pressure for a fundamentally correct and important investigation on the crimes that have occurred in recent months in Gaza. But I mean, I think it's pretty obvious to everyone. I remember a year ago today, Judge, I was watching CNN and I wrote a long tweet expressing horror that CNN had obviously called in its most Zionist anchors, Jake Tapper, Dana Bash, and Wolf Blitzer, who was a former AIPAC staffer, to dominate the airwaves and did not allow a single Arab or Palestinian to speak a week after Israel's slaughter in Gaza began. And then they interviewed Israel's president, Isaac Herzog, who declared that there are no civilians in Gaza. They are all essentially aligned with Hamas, that this is a battle between good and evil. And Dana Bash comes on screen after Herzog and declares, I think it really hit home what the Israeli president said. This is indeed a battle between good and evil. So this is what we got
Right.
CNN. And where are we today? They have a direct role in this Holocaust, and they need to be called out.
Very few people are calling them out as effectively as you, Max. I know you just got back from Turkey, and I want to ask you about your trip. So you may not have seen this because it was run on PBS last night. It's a very, very interesting comment about Prime Minister Netanyahu from, of all people, Nancy Pelosi. I'd like.
The looming conflict between Iran, Israel, and the United States in the Middle East has reached a critical juncture, with both sides preparing for a potential military escalation that could reshape the region. Central to this rising tension is the deployment of the American THAAD, Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System, to Israel, alongside the bolstering of U.S. troop presence in the area. While such moves may appear on the surface to be defensive, aimed at protecting Israel from Iran's highly maneuverable missile capabilities, many experts, including Scott Ritter, argue that the reality is far more complex and politically driven. Scott Ritter, a former Marine intelligence officer and United Nations weapons inspector, recently shared his insights on the Judge Napolitano show. Ritter emphasized that the deployment of the THAAD system and additional U.S. troops is more symbolic than practical in the face of a massive Iranian retaliatory attack. The THAAD system, while sophisticated in its ability to intercept short and medium-range ballistic missiles, is limited in its capacity to address the sheer volume and maneuverability of Iran's missile arsenal. Iran's missile forces, which include a range of ballistic and cruise missiles capable of evading advanced defense systems, could overwhelm the relatively small number of interceptors that THAAD possesses. In Ritter's view, the U.S. decision to send THAAD to Israel is not a purely defensive maneuver. Instead, it's a calculated political move designed to project strength and reassure Israel that the U.S. remains committed to its security. However, the timing and nature of the deployment raise questions about its true purpose. As Ritter pointed out, Israel's threats to bomb Iranian nuclear facilities have escalated tensions, and the presence of U.S. troops in Israel could further complicate the situation. Any Israeli strike on Iran would likely provoke a massive Iranian counterattack, which could inadvertently lead to American casualties if U.S. service members stationed in Israel are caught in the crossfire. This, in turn, would drag the U.S. deeper into the conflict and likely escalate it beyond the region. The ripple effects of such a scenario could be profound. If Iran retaliates against Israel for an airstrike on its facilities, the U.S. would likely step in to defend its ally. Yet this involvement would trigger a broader regional war, with Iran-backed groups such as Hezbollah and other resistance movements targeting both Israeli and American interests. The already volatile Middle East would be plunged into deeper chaos, with major implications for global security. Videos like this are often not promoted by YouTube, so we encourage you to help it reach more people by liking and sharing it with your friends and family. Subscribe to stay informed on the latest developments in Lebanon and Gaza.
The United States announced that it is sending a THAAD, T-H-A-A-D, defensive device, along with 100 or so American troops to operate it to Israel. What can you tell us about THAAD? Is it effective? Is it top of the line, or why are we sending it?
Well, it's interesting because some of the reports that came out said this is the first time the U.S. has ever done this. It's not. During the Gulf War in 1991, we sent Patriot batteries to Israel, and they were actively involved in trying to intercept Iraqi Scud missiles. In 2003, we sent Patriot batteries back to Israel under fear that Iraq might be firing missiles into Israel. In terms of the THAAD, we sent the THAAD there a couple years ago, 2019, I think, as part of an exercise. After the October 7th attack, we sent a THAAD unit back to Nevatim Air Base because that's where we fly in our equipment. That's the main receiving base. So we sent the THAAD there, and along with about 60 soldiers. I guess we pulled that out because now we're sending it back. The THAAD is an advancement on the Patriots, an advancement on the Arrow 2, the Arrow 3, David Sling that the Israelis have. It's a missile that allows intercept at a higher altitude, and it's linked to a radar, a very effective radar that I think an S-band radar that's able to detect and develop firing solutions on multiple targets at once. In theory, it's supposed to be a good system. The fact is, though, this is not a new system. It's been around for a while, and it's using technology and techniques that predate, the hypersonic missile capabilities. This is not a system that's capable of intercepting hypersonic weapons, especially if the hypersonic weapons flood the system, flood the zone, as Iran has shown its tactics. So, again, this is a system that's put in to try and enhance the defense of Israel. Clearly, it failed on October 1st, and the feeling is right now that Israel and the United States don't have a solution to the Iranian missile threat. The THAAD is supposed to provide additional capabilities to deter. I guess that's the hope, is that you tell the Iranians, now we have something that can shoot you down, but it doesn't. There's nothing the THAAD will not be able to stop an Iranian missile attack. First of all, even if they fire everything, my understanding is there's 48 interceptors, very expensive system, by the way. And, if Iran files 200 missiles and all 48 work, I'm a simple Marine, but that still tells me that there's 152 inbound missiles that THAAD didn't get. So, this is just part of the political game the U.S. is playing by telling Israel, we have your back defensively, in an effort to prevent Israel from carrying out offensive operations against Iran.
What do you think will happen if the Iranians destroy the THAAD and kill Americans in the process? And maybe before you answer that, why are Americans going there? Are Israelis not trained or trainable in a short period of time to use this? Are only Americans able to operate this equipment?
This is an American-only system. The Israelis don't have this system, and so only Americans can operate this. At some point in time, I guess we could sell this system to the Israelis, but it has more capabilities than the Israelis need. And I think the feeling was that by jointly working with Israel to develop the Arrow 2, Arrow 3, and David Sling interceptors, that they would provide THAAD-like capabilities. Clearly, that's not the case. So now the THAAD is deployed. But what would happen if it gets hit? Well, I mean, the U.S. has no legal argument. If the U.S. engages Iran, then it's an active, participant in this conflict, and it will pay the price. They're not neutral. They're not, innocents. They are active participants. And then the question is, what does the United States do in response to that? I don't think Iran would deliberately target the THAAD system. They don't need to. It's not a game-changing technology. As I said before, the number of interceptors does not shift the balance of power to Israel. And if the Iranian goal and objective is to take out critical infrastructure, and the THAAD is being positioned to protect, Nevatim airfield, then, never the two shall meet, perhaps. But, what would happen if dozens of Americans were killed or injured? Then America would have to retaliate. We have to. I mean, I'm not saying that I would like this, but as a military commander, I would tell my president, and I would have told him before we go in, I said, by deploying these troops, you do understand that if they take casualties, we must respond decisively, because we cannot create the conditions under which nations around the world believe that they can strike Americans, inflict casualties, and get away with it. We have to deter people from doing this. So if Iran strikes us, we must hit Iran back hard, and we must be prepared to do that right now with the forces on hand. Are you ready to do that, Mr. President? That's really the conversation.
Do you think somebody spoke to him that way, or spoke to Lloyd Austin that way, or Lloyd Austin told him what you just said?
I can guarantee you if a Marine was involved in this, that's exactly how they would have been spoken to. I can't vouch for the Air Force and the Army.
I don't think General Austin is a Marine or was a Marine.
No, he was Army. But he's dealt with Marines before. Look, I'm not going to denigrate the professionalism of the other branches. Anybody who is entrusted with the lives of American service members must protect those lives, which means you don't irresponsibly deploy them without a plan on how to defend them. And if they take casualties, then you must take out that which inflicted the casualties. You must do so decisively, or else we have a USS Liberty situation all over again.
I'm going to read to you from Israeli Channel 14, which was sent to me by one of our colleagues, Alistair Crook. This is about 15 minutes old now. Israel's retaliation against Iran will not be moderate. Instead, it will be significant and will likely cause Iran to respond. Israel will need to prepare for a significant exchange of blows that might drag the Americans in, which Iran certainly would not want. Israel will attack Iran before the U.S. elections. Netanyahu approved the attack plans on Iran, and the attack is expected soon. What do you think will happen?
Well, it's interesting because in parallel to this, we have a statement by a senior Iranian foreign ministry official, a spokesperson, basically saying there will be no more back channel communication with the United States. Apparently, the Iranians and Americans were talking behind the scenes to come up with a scenario on how to avoid escalation. And somebody in the United States leaked out that Iran had agreed to absorb a limited Israeli strike and not retaliate, which is a complete deviation from, Iran's stated posture. And by leaking this was a huge embarrassment to the Iranians. And so the Iranians said, "We're done." And now Israel's left with, the following options: don't strike, do a moderate strike. But now we don't know, we being Israel and the United States, how Iran will respond because the U.S. blew it. I mean, you can't have these behind the scenes back channel talks and then go public with them. It's something the United States does on a regular basis because, we have to feed the press. But it embarrassed the Iranians, put them in a very difficult situation, and now they've withdrawn. And so I think Netanyahu had come to the decision point that he can't not respond. He has to respond. And since you can't differentiate between a moderate and a severe response in terms of Iranian retaliation, you might as well go severe. And now you're daring the United States not to do anything. This is the ultimate goal. This is a huge gambit on the part of Israel. They're going to begin something that, left to their own devices, they will lose in a conventional exchange, meaning that they will start to strike Iran. There's no way they can bring the firepower to bear on Iran that can suppress what Iran is prepared to fire into Israel. And when Iran attacks Israel this next time, they will take out $100 billion worth of critical infrastructure and shut Israel down as a modern nation state. At that point in time, Israel is desperately hoping that America will join them in continuing and furthering the strikes against Iran of an existential nature, meaning that they will seek to end the Iranian regime. That's where we're heading. And what I also say is that in the past months and weeks, the Iranians have made it clear that the fatwa, the religious edict that was passed by the supreme leader that prohibited Iran from having nuclear weapons, is no longer in play. That can be reconsidered by a change in conditions, and the conditions have changed. Iran is ready to go nuclear if Israel pushes them in that direction. And if Israel starts targeting Iranian leadership, command and control, or nuclear facilities, Iran will have a nuclear weapon in less than a week. They'll have 3 to 5 in less than 2 weeks, and they will use them against Israel and take Israel off the face of the earth. This is the direction we're heading, Judge. This is a very dangerous situation.
What direction are we heading with respect to American involvement 3 weeks before a presidential election?
Well, what I will say is there's no congressional. I mean, we don't see Congress convening, discussing the war and the reasons why we would go to war. We don't see any effort by the president to come to Congress and say, hey, this is a dangerous situation. I think we need to have congressional hearings that empower me to carry out massive military operations if the conditions are met. I know we have a War Powers Act, but those are supposed to be for, events that weren't predictable. We were a surprise attack. The president must respond. This right here is a deliberate lead up to a predictable conflict. Congress needs to be involved because, as I said, this is the kind of conflict, if it gets out of control, will involve nuclear weapons and will involve Americans perhaps being on the receiving end of nuclear weapons or maybe using nuclear weapons against Iran. I know the President of the United States has exclusive authority to use nuclear weapons, but war is war, and Congress is the only entity constitutionally permitted to take us into war. This is not an emergency. This is deliberate regime change type conflict that Congress should be involved in, and yet there's no interest on the part of Congress to have any such hearings.
Ritter argues that the era of Israeli belligerence in the region is nearing its end. While Israel has long operated with impunity, launching strikes in Syria, Lebanon, and Gaza, the strategic landscape is shifting. Iran and its allies have strengthened their capabilities, and Israel can no longer act with the same freedom it once had. Ritter suggests that Israel must now operate more like a normal country, subject to international law and regional power dynamics. This is particularly true given that any significant Israeli military action could ignite a conflict that spirals out of its control, particularly if Iran's response proves more devastating than anticipated. The U.S., by deploying its THAAD system and troops, may have intended to bolster Israel's defenses and signal its unwavering support. However, this move could backfire by encouraging Israeli aggression under the assumption that U.S. military support will shield it from consequences. Ritter believes that this emboldens Israel, giving it a false sense of security in escalating tensions with Iran, particularly since the U.S. system alone will not suffice against a large-scale Iranian missile barrage.
I'm sorry to say that you're 100% correct under the Constitution. I say I'm sorry to say because of your last comment. There is no interest on the part of Congress to do its duty, which is to debate war and decide whether or not we should go to war. We have signed several international treaties which say we can only go to war against a country where we are obliged to defend an ally by treaty, not the case with Israel, or where the other country that we're going to on which we're going to declare war poses a serious, imminent, grave threat to American national security. Not the case with respect to Iran. We also have a president, and it's not just him. His predecessors have been the same. We don't like to consult with Congress. They like to just do things on their own. In what form would American aid to Israel take if Iran really unloads on Israel and Netanyahu feels trapped or defeated or desperate?
The United States has said consistently since the administration of Barack Obama that it would not tolerate Iran developing a nuclear weapons capability, that this would be war. Obama took it straight up to the edge of conflict before he realized that he was going to war against a country that didn't have a nuclear weapons program, and he had left himself no option. So that's where the Iran nuclear deal came from, to get us out of this situation. Donald Trump came in and said that if Iran develops a nuclear weapons capability, America will go to war against it. And he withdrew from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. And now we have Joe Biden saying the same thing. Under no circumstances will Iran be allowed to develop nuclear weapons capability. Judge, I just told you, Iran has nuclear weapons capability right now as we speak. They don't have a functioning weapon, but they have the ability to produce a weapon in a matter of days. And they have made the political decision through declaratory policy that this is what they're going to do if pushed to it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Iran is a nuclear power, which means that if Israel gets hit with existential force by Iran, stuff that shuts the lights out, shuts the water out, and Israel starts saying we have to target Iran's nuclear capability. And Israel says we need to use nukes. The United States understands that if Israel nukes Iran, Iran will nuke Israel. And so the United States may very well get into a preemptive attack against Iran using nuclear weapons. This is where we're at. This is the insanity. And we forget that Vladimir Putin just met with the Iranian president in Turkmenistan, where they have cut some sort of deal. They have an ongoing security relationship. I don't think Russia sits by and lets the United States use nuclear weapons against Iran. So now we're talking about a potential U.S.-Russia conflagration that could go nuclear. This is why Congress has to be involved. These are things that the American people need to be assured of, that their representatives are discussing. The potential of a world-ending nuclear event, because Israel can't defeat Hamas and can't defeat Hezbollah. Israel is committing genocide against people. Israel is a irresponsible rogue nation, and Iran is part of a axis of resistance that is holding Israel to account in a managed, responsible fashion. Iran didn't start this fight. Israel did by attacking Iranian diplomatic facilities in Damascus, assassinating senior Hamas leadership inside Tehran. Could you imagine during the inauguration of the next president on January 20th that we invited somebody, we the United States, because the president represents we the people, invites somebody to the inauguration. They sit in and they are there. They're in the inauguration. The president has them stand up. There's applause. They shake hands and all that. He goes back to his hotel and somebody assassinates him. Do we just sit there and go, oh, yeah, that's okay? No, it's an act of war. An act of war. Israel has committed acts of war against Iran, and now Iran is responding in warlike fashion, but measured. Iran said it's over. We don't need to go on. But if Israel chooses to go on, that's because Israel is trying to make this an existential issue where only one side walks away from this. And the United States is going to get caught up into this.
In the broader context, this deployment also raises serious questions about the U.S. role in perpetuating conflicts in the Middle East. Ritter pointed out that this move essentially erases any human rights record the U.S. once claimed to uphold. By siding so heavily with Israel, particularly as it continues its airstrikes and operations in Gaza and Lebanon, the U.S. appears to be contributing to the cycle of violence rather than fostering stability in the region. This involvement risks making the U.S. a direct participant in any conflict that may erupt, thereby placing American personnel and interests at significant risk. Looking forward, the prospect of a war involving Iran, Israel, and the U.S. seems increasingly likely unless significant diplomatic efforts are made to de-escalate tensions. Ritter has warned that Iran is more than capable of defending itself and inflicting significant damage on Israel, should it come to that. With advanced missile technology, a vast network of regional allies, and a deep-rooted resistance against Israeli and U.S. influence in the Middle East, Iran is not the same opponent it once was. The consequences of a war in this region would be felt far beyond the borders of Israel and Iran. Oil markets could be thrown into turmoil, global shipping lanes disrupted, and the humanitarian toll would likely be immense, particularly if Hezbollah and other groups launch their own offensives against Israel. The U.S., for its part, would face a difficult balancing act between supporting its ally Israel and avoiding a full-blown regional war that could draw in other nations, including Saudi Arabia, Russia, and Turkey. In conclusion, while the deployment of the American THAAD system and additional U.S. troops to Israel may be intended as a deterrent, it is clear that this strategy carries significant risks. As Scott Ritter and others have pointed out, the ability of THAAD to defend against a large-scale Iranian missile attack is limited, and the presence of U.S. forces could further complicate an already tense situation. Rather than de-escalating tensions, these moves might embolden Israel to act aggressively, with catastrophic consequences for the entire region. The next steps taken by the US, Israel, and Iran will likely determine the course of the Middle East for years to come, with war hanging precariously on the horizon.
foreign minister threatening Saudi Arabia. What's the threat? He said that Saudi oil facilities would be hit by missiles if they even think about allowing Israeli planes to use Saudi airspace to strike Iranian territory. This was officially reported by the Wall Street Journal after Iran's foreign minister met with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. So, what was Saudi Arabia's response? I'll tell you in a second, but first, let me give you another important piece of information. If you're one of the people waiting for Israel to strike Iran's nuclear reactors, you should know that it's probably not as easy as you think. That's because the Israeli Air Force faces several challenges just to reach Iran's reactors, even before attempting to strike them. The act of reaching the reactors itself is difficult, let alone striking them. This raises some important questions. Why is it so hard to reach Iran's nuclear reactors? Why is striking and destroying them even harder than reaching them? Why did the US refuse to hit Iran's nuclear reactors? Why did Iran's foreign minister threaten Saudi Arabia before Israel's potential strike on Iran's nuclear facilities? And what exactly was the threat? And the biggest question of all, what did Saudi Arabia do when Iran threatened it? The third issue is that Israeli jets would need to fly over the airspace of Arab countries like Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Iraq, Syria, and possibly Turkey. If Israel is unable to fly over Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Iraq, and Syria, they might have to take a longer route, flying through Turkish airspace, strike Iran, and then return via Turkey. However, Saudi Arabia has officially informed the United States that it will not allow its airspace to be used for an attack on Iran. Jordan has also stated previously that it will not allow anyone to use its airspace to attack another country. Even if Jordan were to permit Israeli planes to use its airspace, Israel would still face Iraq, where Iranian-backed militias hold sway. So the geography surrounding Israel is the first major obstacle preventing it from striking Iranian targets. You might ask, how did Israel manage to strike the Natanz reactor in 2021? I'll explain that later, but let me first cover the other challenges Israel would face if it tries to strike Iranian nuclear facilities. The fourth issue is Iran's air defense systems. In case you're unaware, Iran possesses 24 different types of air defense systems, all waiting for Israeli jets. The downing of even a single Israeli aircraft over Iranian territory would be a disaster, not just for Israel, but also for the United States, since America is the manufacturer of those planes. Iran is allied with Russia and China, so if any Israeli or American planes were captured in Iran, they would be dismantled and sent to Russia or China for examination. This wouldn't be the first time Iran has downed an American-made plane. Back in 2019, they shot down a drone that was considered the crown jewel of the US Air Force, worth $120 million. To put that in perspective, it was even more expensive than an F-35, which costs about $77 million. The downed drone was primarily a surveillance plane capable of flying at altitudes that other aircraft couldn't reach, about 65,000 feet in the air. This altitude should have made it difficult for Iran to shoot it down, but they managed to, and it was a major embarrassment for the US Air Force and a testament to the effectiveness of Iran's air defense systems. Now, some might ask for more details on Iran's air defense systems. With 24 of them, discussing each one could take up the entire episode. But let me break down the three most important and dangerous systems among them. Two are Russian, and the third is Iranian. Surprisingly, the Iranian system is considered even more dangerous than the Russian ones. Let's start with the first one, the Russian S-300. This system has a range of 200 kilometers and is used to protect the Fordow nuclear facility. Its missiles can intercept targets moving at speeds of up to 10,000 kilometers per hour. The second system is the Russian S-400. Remember when I said the S-300 has a range of 200 kilometers? Well, the S-400 can detect enemy aircraft and missiles from up to 600 kilometers away, and it can track 300 targets simultaneously. Its engagement range is 400 kilometers, meaning it can detect a target at 600 kilometers and take it down at 400 kilometers. The S-400 is capable of shooting down fighter jets, helicopters, drones, ballistic missiles, and cruise missiles. Recently, Iran announced that it was negotiating with Russia to acquire the S-400 system, but until a couple of months ago, there was no confirmation that they had received it. Then, in a report published by the New York Times, it was revealed that Moscow had delivered advanced radar systems and air defense systems to Tehran. However, the report did not specify whether the S-400 was among those systems. In contrast, some Iranian news outlets reported that Iran had not only received the S-400, but also Su-35 fighter jets from Russia. We discussed the Su-35 in a previous episode titled How the F-16 Was Shot Down, which you can check out for more details. That leaves us with the third and most dangerous air defense system, which, according to the Iranian military, is even more advanced than the S-300 and S-400. This is the Iranian-made Bavar 373 SAM system. It uses Sayad-2, Sayad-3 and Sayad-4B missiles. What makes this system unique is first that it's domestically produced, making it difficult for American or Israeli intelligence to identify its weaknesses. Secondly, and more importantly, it was specifically designed to target stealth aircraft. So if you think you're safe flying a stealth aircraft to avoid detection, Iran has built a system to take down that stealth aircraft. According to the Iranian military, the Bavar 373 is a serious threat to Israeli and American jets, though some might argue that this claim is exaggerated. All right, the only real option here is for Israel to carry out an airstrike, so we can test all of Iran's air defense systems and see if they can actually bring down Israeli and American planes and missiles. Now, let's move on to the most important and difficult question. What happens if Israel manages to overcome the challenges of distance, refueling and navigating the airspace of Arab countries? What happens if they even succeed in bypassing Iran's air defenses? Let's assume the way is clear for Israeli planes and they do enter Iran. Will they actually be able to destroy Iran's underground nuclear reactors? You might say, well, of course they can. Didn't they manage to assassinate Hassan Nasrallah while he was underground? So of course they can destroy underground nuclear reactors. But I tell you that according to the British newspaper Financial Times, which spoke to European military experts, hitting Iran's underground nuclear reactors is almost impossible. Why? Well, there are several reasons. First, when Iran built its nuclear reactors, they didn't just build them underground, they built them at depths reaching 100 meters. And even more importantly, they chose to build the reactors between mountains to make it much harder for any airstrike to hit them. So for Israeli planes, three challenges arise. First, they have to bypass Iran's air defenses, which is almost impossible. Second, they have to execute an airstrike on a target within a narrow space due to the mountains surrounding the reactors on all sides. Even launching the missiles from Israeli planes before striking the reactor would be nearly impossible. Or if they can pull it off, it would be incredibly difficult. And here comes the third and final problem. Israeli missiles need to penetrate the first layers of the ground and reach a depth of 100 meters before detonating, all just to hit the reactor core or the body of the nuclear facility. If the strike only partially hits the target, it's pointless. It'd just be a wasted effort. So to pull off an airstrike like this, you'd need at least 100 fighter jets from your fleet, which has only around 340 jets in total. That means you'd be using almost a third of your air force for just one strike. And in the end, you could either return empty-handed, or you might manage to hit the reactor and put it out of commission. If not, the whole mission would have been for nothing. Someone might say, well, Israel will just use whatever it takes to hit the reactor, even if it means using all their bunker-busting bombs. But even that might not be enough. Why? Military experts told the Financial Times that Israel would likely need to use a GBU-57 bomb, an American bomb that weighs 14 tons. You might say, well, the US could just give it to them, And you'd be right, but here's the catch. Because of its 14-ton weight and its length of over 6 meters, this bomb requires a specific type of bomber to carry it and launch it, one that Israeli planes can't handle. The only aircraft capable of carrying it is the American B-2 Spirit bomber. Now, I want you to put yourself in the shoes of the US military. Do you think they'd risk sending a B-2 Spirit to Iran, knowing that Iran shot down one of their most expensive surveillance drones just a few years ago? If I were them, I wouldn't send it. So what's Israel supposed to do? They can hit any target, but not Iran's nuclear reactors. Is it really that bad? Now, who steps in? The Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, an American think tank, said that even the GBU-57 bomb wouldn't be enough to hit Iran's underground nuclear reactors. This is due to Iran's clever use of mountainous terrain and the depth at which they've buried the reactors. So what's the only solution to strike these reactors? CSIS says the only way is to use nuclear bombs, but of course no one is going to agree to that. The US itself refuses to use regular bombs on Iran, so how could you suggest nukes? But this analysis from the CSIS shows just how difficult and risky it would be. So is there any way Israel could strike Iran's nuclear reactors? The experts told the Financial Times that theoretically Israel could. How? Every nuclear reactor needs ventilation and support systems like electricity. Any minor disruption in the ventilation or the electrical power that runs the centrifuges used to enrich uranium could easily shut down the entire reactor. So, while Israel might not destroy the reactor completely or take it out of service permanently, it could send a message to Iran that it can hit their reactors whenever it wants. So the question is, would Israel and the US take such a big risk just to temporarily disable Iran's nuclear reactors for a couple of days or weeks? The likely answer is no. No one in their right mind would do that. But you might wonder, how did Israel manage to hit the Natanz reactor in 2021, despite the difficulty of striking Iran's nuclear sites? Well, the Natanz reactor was attacked more than once, not just in 2021. It was hit in 2010 through a cyber attack using a virus called Stuxnet. An Iranian agent working for Israeli and American intelligence infiltrated the facility and inserted a USB drive loaded with the virus into the computers controlling the reactor's operations. In less than a minute, all the systems, the malfunctioning reactor. The second attack happened in 2021, resulting from an explosive device inside the electricity sector responsible for powering the centrifuges with electrical current. Again, the result was the reactor being disabled. However, this particular operation stood out from the previous strikes. Why? Because it happened the day after Iran's National Uranium Enrichment Day celebration. On that day, Iran's president himself announced during the celebration that Iran had started using the new model of centrifuges, the IR-9. But, lo and behold, Israel and the US struck the reactor the very next day. So, as you can see, it's true that the US and Israel managed to hit the Iranian nuclear reactors, but those were light strikes from a distance, whether by planting a virus or an explosive device. But now, Israel wants to take out the entire reactor using airstrikes and take it completely out of service. How will they do that unless the Israeli military has acquired a new weapon or intelligence about vulnerabilities inside the nuclear reactor that would allow them to hit it and take it offline? And here, dear viewer, you can't forget about the espionage case involving the Quds Force commander Ismail Khani and his office manager Ehsan Shafieki, which I detailed for you in the previous episode, The Surrender of Hezbollah. You can watch it if you want to know how the Israeli Mossad managed to infiltrate the office of the Quds Force commander and recruit one of them. Most likely the Mossad obtained crucial information about Iran's air defense systems, nuclear reactors, and the latest weapons deals they've received from Russia. So, have we discussed everything? The answer is obviously no, but due to the time constraints of this episode, we'll stop here for now. Let's wait and see what Israel does and how Iran will respond. But before I ask you today's episode question, there's one small detail you should know. In 2009, Iranian intelligence managed to arrest an Iranian nuclear scientist named Shahram Amiri on charges of spying for American intelligence. What did Iran do to him? They executed him. Later, Iran discovered another Iranian spy inside its nuclear reactors working for American intelligence, named Reza Karimi. He's the one who planted the explosive device in the Natanz reactor the day after the National Uranium Enrichment Day celebration that I mentioned earlier. So, what did Iran do to that spy? Did they execute him like the other nuclear scientist? Let me tell you, the answer is no. They couldn't do anything to him because American intelligence managed to smuggle him out of Iran. So, what do we take from this? We conclude that Iran's nuclear reactors are compromised. Instead of just one spy, there are 2, 3, and 4. Sure, you've discovered 2 of them. But how many more are there that you haven't caught yet? And will the US and Israel use this information to carry out the next strike or not? Now, the question for you, do you think Israel will take the risk and strike the Iranian nuclear reactors, or will they settle for hitting oil facilities or even military bases? If you were in their shoes, what would you do?
Finally, I hope that
Go figure. Follow me.